Chapter 753. There was no answer. The red flame was completely absorbed by the statue the moment Li Yuan turned around. More and more cracks appeared, and rays of red light shot out from the crack. The red light carried the scent of blood. This scent was from Ji Hong. These red lights seemed to contain powerful aura and spread out toward the scroll. However, at this moment, there were also many cracks under the statue's eyes. When the red light came out from those cracks, there was an illusion. It was as if the celestial statue was crying two streams of blood. Was I wrong? Li Yuan stared at the stone statue as he muttered to himself, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Wang Lin's eyes were cold. This Li Yuan was not dangerous. With only his peak late-stage ascendant cultivation, Wang Lin could easily win. However, there was a powerful aura coming from inside Li Yuan's body, and the source of this was the slave imprint. It was because of this aura that this person always gave off a mysterious aura. Wang Lin was very wary of that power. He first noticed it when Li Yuan was explaining everything under the stone statue. That moment where Li Yuan convulsed and was soaked in sweat had a very different meaning in Wang Lin's eyes. At that moment, Wang Lin only kept this in mind. It wasn't until Ji Hong's gaze at the stone statue before death that Wang Lin felt like a bolt of lightning had struck him, and he suddenly gained enlightenment. The Ji family was the descendants of the Celestial. As for the Li family, perhaps they really were innocent. It was all because their ancestors had boldly entered this place and received the slave imprint that caused the entire family to decline. Generations of the family contributed their cultivation and lifespans to slowly allow this indestructible celestial soul to recover. The Li family may have really wanted to rebel, but it was obvious it had failed every time. It wasn't until the Li family ancestor from tens of thousands of years ago did the Li family had a chance. However, the slave imprint that had nourished its master for tens of thousands of years had gathered enough for the soul hidden inside it to awaken. This was how the talented Li family ancestor appeared. As a result, when the Li ancestor said that he was releasing the Li family from the slave imprint, he was in fact resurrecting his master. Wang Lin had really thought that the failure tens of thousands of years ago was due to some problem with the Ji family. However, it wasn't until he thought about why Li Yuan had to find him that he came to a different conclusion. Li Yuan's preparations were most likely very complete, and he couldn't have planned on meeting him before entering the celestial realm. When Wang Lin saw the stone statue and understood the karma between the Li and Ji family, he suddenly understood. It was because Li Yuan had seen the karma whip when he used in the battle against the illusory yin cultivator. This was why Li Yuan chose him. The karma whip affected karma. The failure tens of thousands of years ago was not because of the servant, the treasures, or the Ji family. It was because the Celestial was unwilling to be revived this way. The Celestial was unwilling to pay the price of the life of all his descendants to release the sealed soul. It can be imagined that Ji Hong's blood was not enough for the resurrection of a Celestial. It was likely that outside the Celestial realm, the Ji family was carrying out some kind of sacrifice with death as the price. The karmic cause was the resurrection of the celestial statue. The karmic effect was the removal of the celestial soul resistance. But how could the soul of a celestial be so simple? If Wang Lin were to use the karma whip, he himself would have been dragged into it, and even he didn't know if he would survive. If Wang Lin hadn't appeared, Li Yuan would have still used other methods after the failure from the first time. However, even Li Yuan wasn't sure if these methods would succeed, which was why he said he was 70% confident and 90% if he had the karma whip. Wang Lin boldly speculated that this Li Yuan also had a karma-related treasure inside his bag. This would explain why, after failing tens of thousands of years ago, the Ji family used various methods to retain the three treasures. Instead of hiding them, they made the whole clan aware of the situation. Their goal was to wait for the second reincarnation of the slave imprint in the Li family. This was why everything had gone so smoothly when Li Yuan went to the Ji family. However, Wang Lin remembered the way Li Yuan treated Ji Hong along the way. After constantly watching their interaction, it was as if Li Yuan was constantly changing personalities. Adding on the change that happened to Li Yuan under the stone statue, Wang Lin confirmed his own speculation. Li Yuan's real soul hadn't died, and still existed. To be more accurate, there was exactly one soul inside Li Yuan's body, but this soul had two different sides. One was the true Li Yuan, and the other was the remnant soul inside the slave imprint. The conflict between the two made it so Li Yuan couldn't use the full power of his family's restrictions. Every time Li Yuan used a restriction, it would show signs of collapse. The 18-plum restriction was like this, and the black lines formed by the annihilation restriction was also like this. After understanding all of this, Wang Lin stayed inside the mountain and river painting, and silently stared at Li Yuan. He felt that this Li Yuan was somewhat pitiful. He was such a loyal servant that he was willing to do whatever it took in order for his master to revive. Just like the image he saw through the illusion from the statue. When the master died, the servant standing at the tip of the sword looked back with vacant and sad eyes. The master on the sword hilt was no longer there. It was as if he was the only one left in this world as stood on the sword tip. Countless years of waiting and 2 attempts at resurrection, but ultimately he was still unable to escape. Li Yuan stared at the statue and knelt on the ground. Master, am I really wrong? More and more cracks appeared on the statue at this moment. As the cracks spread, the red light became even more intense. The red light under the statue's eyes gathered together as if they were real tears of blood. Why aren't you willing to wake up? I just want the sword hilt to no longer be empty. The master can always stand on the sword hilt, and I can stand on the sword tip to help you battle the heavens and earth, Li Yuan muttered to himself, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. Wang Lin stood within the mountain and river painting as he silently watched this. He had no life and death grudge with Li Yuan. He let out a sigh and put away the karma whip. It was because of extreme paranoia that he became lost. After the first failure tens of thousands of years ago, his belief was unstable. Now that he has failed a second time, his faith has collapsed. More and more cracks appeared on the statue. Even the stone sword with the servant on it was covered in cracks. Red light came from within the cracks and colored half the sky. The stone released even more red light until it slowly extended outward and was absorbed by the scroll. At the beginning, the scroll didn't absorb much red light. However, as the statue released more and more red light, the scroll began to absorb the red light from the statue even faster. In the end, the red lights seemed to link together and were rapidly pulled out from the statue. This scene caused the stunned Li Yuan to expose excitement in his eyes. Master. More and more red light appeared, but none of it leaked out, and it was all absorbed by the scroll. The red light from the statue gradually dimmed as if all of it were released by the statue. Finally, when the last ray of red light came out from the stone statue and into the scroll, the entire statue trembled. It was as if it had lost its soul and no longer had any intelligence. It now looked very ordinary. The scroll that had absorbed all the red light emitted a bright light. A flame appeared at the corner of the scroll and slowly grew larger. The scroll began to burn from the edge. It wasn't just one edge, but all the edges of the scroll began burning at once. Green smoke came out from the burning scroll and didn't dissipate. As Li Yuan looked at this scene, the excitement in his eyes became even more intense. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed and he carefully observed. The burning of the scroll slowly moved toward the center, formed the edges. The celestial on the sword hilt seemed to possess a soul at this moment and flickered inside the burning scroll. In the end, the flame covered the entire scroll, and soon the scroll became a pile of dust that was blown away by the wind. The green smoke formed by the burning scroll wasn't blown away by the wind but floated in the air. It then vaguely took the shape of a person. This person's figure was extremely blurry and his appearance couldn't be clearly seen. However, Wang Lin clearly saw a sword formed by the green smoke under the person's feet, and this person was standing on the sword hilt. There was some smoke swaying near the sword hilt. It was difficult to see if it was the sword's tassel or just green smoke. The person standing on the sword hilt rose into the air and waved his hand gently, summoning Li Yuan. Li Yuan, who was standing on the ground, immediately trembled. A complex rune appeared on Li Yuan's forehead. This was the slave imprint. As the imprint flickered, the remnant soul inside the slave imprint flew out into the sky and landed on the tip of the sword. The green smoke charged into the sky and disappeared without a trace. All of this seemed like an illusion. The real and unreal seemed to not exist and everything was but a dream. Wang Lin's expression was a bit confused as he looked at the statue that had lost its spirit. Then his gaze fell on the seal on his right hand and he fell into a trance. It was still the same ancient celestial realm. Still the celestial sword flying into the sky, and still the same 2 people on the sword. However, The difference this time was the sound that came from the celestial before he died. I am dead, my soul extinguished. The statue collapsed into countless pieces of stone. It was now just a pile of debris. Did the celestial die back then and all of this was a lonely dream formed by the remnant soul of the servant, or was it really what Wang Lin had guessed before there were some questions that Wang Lin would be able to get satisfactory explanations? There was no answer, just like how there was no way to tell if the green smoke was real or fake. Wang Lin thought that he knew everything, but when he saw the green smoke, everything felt fake. Perhaps only the servant's remnant soul was real, the only one that knew all the answers. From this day onward, there was an extra sword made of green smoke in the Thunder Celestial realm. There was a figure that stood at the tip as if it would last for an eternity. Where is this? A weak voice came from Li Yuan's mouth as he lied on the ground. He looked around until his gaze finally fell on Wang Lin. Finally, the weekend is here, and Leo can finally sleep to his heart's content, not needing to get up early to take the daughter to school. Been burning the midnight oil these past few days, utterly exhausted. Chapter Ancient God Leather Armor. There were many celestial caves scattered across the numerous fragments of the Thunder Celestial realm along with the treasures of their previous masters. These places were also filled with countless restrictions. It was not simple to enter the dwellings of celestials. Despite the fact that the Thunder Celestial realm had opened countless times over the years, there were still places with restrictions not broken. These restrictions were often too powerful, and sometimes there were places that cultivators shouldn't touch. In an area filled with debris, Yuan squatted down, touched the earth, and said, "Brother Shu, look here. This is a typical use of the fourth law of the 8 laws of celestial restrictions. What it focuses on is causing disorder in the surrounding celestial spiritual energy in order to hide from divine sense. If I'm not mistaken, once this restriction is broken, the cave of a celestial should be revealed here." Beside him, Wang Lin looked attentively and nodded. "Brother Li means that the restriction here is primarily made of this soil?" The fragment they were on wasn't very big. Looking at it from afar, the earth was black and the sky was dark. There wasn't any thunder here, but one could hear the muffled sounds of thunder. There wasn't anyone within tens of thousands of kilometers of these two. These two figures looked quite desolate here. Li Yuan nodded and smiled. "I admire Brother Shu's understanding of restrictions. In this past month, most of the times I said something, you were able to see the key points." Li Yuan grabbed a handful of dirt and put it inside his bag of holding. He then said, "Brother Li should take some of this restriction dirt as well. Once we leave the Thunder Celestial realm, the dirt may change after leaving the Celestial realm environment. If that is really the case, then once we return to the Li family, it will be a good material for making the restriction compass." "Many thanks, Brother Li." Wang Lin smiled slightly as he squatted down and grabbed a handful of dirt. Li Yuan was very emotional as he sincerely said, "It should be me who is thanking you. If not for you, I would have already died, and let's not mention you freeing me from the slave imprint." He became sober 1 month ago. After the initial confusion, his memory slowly emerged inside his mind. In particular, the various acts he committed while under the control of the slave imprint made it difficult for him to calm down. After understanding everything, he was very grateful toward Wang Lin. He shared his study of restrictions without any hesitation with Wang Lin to express his gratitude. "Once we return to the Li family, I'll take Brother Shu to the Ancestral Inheritance Temple. Once there, I can pay respects to the ancestors and then teach you the annihilation restriction to repay our debt." As Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin, his eyes were crystal clear. Wang Lin backed up a few steps and clasped his hands at Li Yuan. Although Wang Lin didn't speak, his eyes showed the gravity of it all. The annihilation restriction was one of the 4 great restrictions, and over the last month, Li Yuan had explained a lot of it to him. This restriction was a lot like a spell, and although it wasn't a celestial spell, it was comparable to one. In order to learn this restriction, one must learn it at a place of inheritance. In this world, the Li family was the only place left. Unfortunately, the restriction here isn't complete. It must have been broken by someone many years ago, but the method they used to break it is extremely crude. Li Yuan looked at the earth and pondered a bit. He pointed between his eyebrows and a black line flew out. Then his hand immediately formed a seal, and he pressed the seal down on the earth along with his finger. Break. With one word, the earth seemed to shake. With Li Yuan's index finger as the center, the earth trembled, and suddenly the restrictions broken layer by layer. What appeared before Wang Lin was a celestial mountain and a beautiful pavilion. This mountain wasn't very tall, and there was also a magnificent palace on its side. However, the mountain was filled with holes, as if there had been countless celestial plants there that were taken away. The only plants remaining were some very ordinary-looking trees that swayed in the wind. The palace was also in ruin. It merely looked dignified. It is indeed as I suspected. Li Yuan bitterly smiled and looked back at Wang Lin. Wang Lin faintly smiled and said, "Brother Li's restriction is really amazing. In the last month, you were able to see through restrictions right away. Although most of the time someone else had been there before, as time goes on, perhaps we will really find a complete celestial palace. Each of the 4 ancient restrictions will have powerful spells when cultivated to the peak. Whether it is the celestials, or the demons high above, or the mortal beast below, they can all be sealed. The 18 plum restriction is something derived from the annihilation restriction. However, it was spread outside, and that's how the world outside found out about it." As Li Yuan spoke, he was filled with confidence. Wang Lin looked at Li Yuan and said, "With how powerful the annihilation restriction is, there must be a lot of people seeking it in the Al-Heaven star system." Li Yuan wryly smiled and nodded. "I don't want to lie to Brother Shu. Over the countless years that the Li family suffered under the slave imprint, the annihilation restriction has been taught outside the family 7 times. Every time was because it was the last resort." But Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, "What they learned was indeed the annihilation restriction. The Li family didn't hide anything from them and even let them comprehend it at the inheritance temple. However, without the restriction heart, it can be considered the real annihilation restriction. The restriction heart is something only the head of each generation can inherit. After we leave the Thunder Celestial Realm, I'll go to the Ancestral Temple and permanently give you half of the restriction heart." Wang Lin was silent for a moment and then clasped his hands at Li Yuan once more. Li Yuan quickly waved his hand. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly exclaimed and stared at the palace on the mountain. "Brother Shu, look over there." Wang Lin raised his head and looked at the palace. The dilapidated palace looked normal, but after staring at it for a long time, he seemed to have found some clues. Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and he slowly said, "The tree behind the palace. This whole time, only the left side has moved, while the right side didn't move at all." Li Yuan's eyes revealed shock, and he nodded. "Although Brother Shu hasn't learned the annihilation restriction, just your observation skills are enough to surpass many restriction masters." Wang Lin smiled and said, "It looks like our luck is pretty good." Li Yuan laughed and flew toward the mountain with Wang Lin. They soon arrived next to the palace. Wang Lin immediately noticed a gloomy aura coming from the motionless half of the tree. This gloomy aura gave off a sense of danger. Wang Lin stopped, and Li Yuan stopped almost at the exact same time. Under the tree, there were 2 white skeletons, and one of them was wearing leather armor. This armor was very rough and had some natural cracks. At the moment Wang Lin saw the armor, his eyes suddenly widened, revealing a rare look of disbelief. "This is day in, day out, nearing 3,000 words, reading a lot, but can't force myself to split the story into 2,000 words chapters, because then the flavor's gone." Leo with tears in his eyes, longing for the like button for the video. Chapter 755, Shocking Change. "Ancient God skin." Wang Lin's expression immediately darkened as he stared at the leather armor on the skeleton. He couldn't tell what feeling it was, but the moment he saw the armor, Wang Lin felt sorrow. He carefully looked again. This was indeed leather armor made from the skin of an ancient god. Although he didn't know how many stars this ancient god had, when looking at the leather armor, he thought of his original body. Li Yuan whispered, "Does Brother Shu know this thing?" Wang Lin shook his head and calmly said, "I don't know, but it looks similar to something a friend owned." Li Yuan didn't ask more but looked at the tree next to the skeleton and began to deduce. A moment later his hands formed a seal and pointed at the tree. The 18 plum restriction immediately appeared and charged at the tree. One by one, the plum restrictions landed, and then the space around the tree began to twist. Countless ripples appeared, and even the skeleton below the tree began to twist. Finally, a sound like a mirror shattering echoed, and everything before them suddenly collapsed. The tree was gone, and the skeleton was gone as well. The only thing that remained before Li Yuan and Wang Lin's eyes was a transfer array that gave off a soft light. Li Yuan looked at the transfer array and said, "This is the third law of the 8 laws of celestial restrictions. Its main purpose is mirages. The skeleton we saw wasn't really lying under the tree, using the skeleton as bait to attract people and then kill them with this restriction. I can begin to guess how many people have died over the years." Wang Lin nodded. He had also seen through this. If that skeleton was real, it would have been impossible for it to have remained intact for so long. This is a slaughter restriction. It looks like that leather armor is a very tempting celestial treasure. Li Yuan's eyes became cold. Wang Lin pondered a bit and slowly said, "I just want to know if this restriction was left by the Celestials or a trap set by someone who came later." Li Yuan also silently pondered. He was also pondering this question. Then he slowly said, "In any case, I can determine that this is the first time that this restriction has been broken. After all, I observed it for a long time and it showed no trace of having been reorganized. The time the restriction has been around also matches this." Wang Lin's eyes were focused as he slowly said, "It could be that some changes happened to the restriction over the years. This allowed some light to leak out and showed us the inside of the restriction." Li Yuan pondered slightly and nodded. What Brother Shu said contains some truth. There is 70% chance it is as Brother Shu said. Of course, there is also the chance that this was deliberately set by someone to kill and steal treasures. Wang Lin and Li Yuan were both astute people with extraordinary minds. The two only needed to discuss a bit to be able to calculate an answer infinitely close to the truth. Just at this moment, the transfer array that appeared after the restriction was broken began to show signs of instability. It was as if it had been hidden in the dark for so long that once it appeared, it began to conflict with the celestial spiritual energy in the surroundings. Countless small vortexes had appeared on the edge of the transfer array. This was a sign of collapse. Some illusions appeared from the vortexes. Although they were all fragments of images, one could see the wreckage of ancient buildings. Wang Lin and Li Yuan both noticed this at the same time, and both of their eyes narrowed. Li Yuan laughed. "It looks like Brother Shu's speculation is correct. Why don't the two of us go and check it out?" Just as Wang Lin was about to speak, a powerful divine sense spread out. This divine sense was too powerful. It was as if the divine sense itself contained a spell. As it spread out, the clouds in the sky spread out as if didn't dare to provoke it, and allowed the divine sense to scan this fragment at will. Li Yuan's expression changed. At the moment the divine sense swept by, he felt like it was even difficult to breathe. It was as if this divine sense was corporeal and was pressing down on his body like Mount Tai. It also caused the celestial spiritual energy in his body to go out of control and forced him to cough out a mouthful of blood. The divine sense originally only swept by, but then it immediately came back and locked onto this location. Wang Lin was even more shocked. This divine sense gave him a familiar feeling. However, at this moment, he immediately moved without any hesitation and charged toward the transfer array. Li Yuan's face was pale and he almost lost his wit as he followed closely behind Wang Lin. The two of them were originally not far away from the transfer array. At this moment, they moved very fast and got even closer to the array. However, the divine sense suddenly became crazy, and the area within 1,000 feet of them suddenly became red. Strands of red smoke suddenly came out and became something like ghosts. They let out a sharp wails and charged at Wang Lin. "Restriction!" Wang Lin shouted as he grabbed Li Yuan and charged toward the transfer array. Li Yuan's astuteness was not weaker than Wang Lin's, so he immediately understood Wang Lin. If both of them attacked, it would slow them down. At this moment of crisis, Wang Lin focusing on speed, while Li Yuan focused on attack, was the best choice. While allowing Wang Lin to pull him, Li Yuan's hand moved rapidly and countless restrictions began to appear. The moment the restrictions appeared, they trembled and divided into 18. A large amount of restrictions appeared in almost an instant. A large amount of restrictions appeared and stopped the ghosts coming from the red smoke. Wang Lin didn't look back as he pulled Li Yuan to the edge of the transfer array. He was one step from entering the transfer array. Just at this moment a cold snort came from the divine sense. Then a cold voice echoed in the area. "Blood space, condense." The moment these 3 words appeared, a force immediately began to squeeze this 1,000 feet area. The space rapidly solidified as if it was trying to freeze everything within this area. Wang Lin was only one step from the transfer array. However, after he raised his foot to take the step, it was as if an entire mountain was tied to his back and his step slowed down. Even his body felt countless powerful treasures squeezing him as if they wanted to keep him in place. Not only Wang Lin but Li Yuan also felt this. This power was simply too powerful. It was comparable to the heaven's might. It was as if an invisible hand has fallen from the sky and grabbed hold of this 1,000 feet area. Its 5 fingers slowly closed in as if it wanted to crush this area. Wang Lin's face was pale and cold sweat filled his forehead. He couldn't even lift his hand to take out a magical treasure. He could vaguely see a flash of red light charging toward this location from the distant void. A red figure was quickly condensing within the red light. A sense of hatred was coming from inside the red light. This was a hatred that carried over across 2 star systems. The killing intent within was unimaginable. International Children's Day brings tears in wishing for the like button for the video. Chapter Trap. During the moment of life and death crisis, Wang Lin opened his third eye without any hesitation. At this moment, a fan-shaped red light opened and he barely managed to turn his head. This red light didn't shine toward the void but toward Li Yuan. The force holding Li Yuan down immediately loosened when the red light shined on him. His face was pale, but he quickly raised his right hand and pressed it down between his eyebrows without any hesitation. A black line as thick as a baby's arm immediately flew out from between his eyebrows. It quickly turned into a rune before him and Li Yuan shouted, "Annihilation Restriction Heart!" In an instant, the restriction began to flash rapidly and expanded like crazy. At the moment the red shadow closed in, it collapsed. Boom! A loud sound suddenly echoed and set off a huge shockwave, causing the force holding down the area to become unstable. The restriction wasn't destroyed. It shattered into thousands of smaller black lines that formed various strange patterns that rapidly spread. These restrictions had a strange connection between them, and the wider they spread, the more pale Li Yuan became. It was obvious that using the real annihilation restriction was a big burden on his body. Seal! With one word, these restrictions immediately surrounded the area. They appeared near the red shadow and gathered toward it. The red shadow gave off a bright red glow, creating a blood sea in the sky, and immediately charged out as the restrictions closed in on it. However, just at this moment the restrictions all exploded, creating a thunderous echo. The entire fragment showed signs of instability as if it was about to collapse. The moment the force holding them down loosened, Wang Lin grabbed Li Yuan and stepped into the transfer array that was about to collapse. The transfer array flashed and Wang Lin and Li Yuan instantly disappeared. At the moment they vanished, Wang Lin's left hand mercilessly smashed down on the array, causing it to immediately dissipate. The surrounding area was completely silent. The blood-red figure slowly walked over. He stood before where the transfer array was and silently pondered. After a long time he raised his right foot and mercilessly stomped the ground. A large crack appeared under his feet and spread out like a crazy dragon across the fragment. The crack split again and again until the entire fragment was covered in terrifying cracks. The power from a cultivator beyond the Nirvana Scryer stage is above the limit of the Thunder Celestial Realm. A storm spread across the fragment and countless cracks appeared all over it. At this moment, even countless spatial rifts appeared in the sky. The earth collapsed. This fragment of the Thunder Celestial Realm collapsed under the stomp of this red shadow. Large amounts of earth collapsed and dissipated, causing a huge series of chain reactions. More and more spatial cracks that continued to devour everything appeared in the sky. The ground continued to break off into the void. Some were devoured by the spatial rifts and disappeared without a trace. Half an hour later, the sky was no longer sky, and the earth became nothing. One of the remaining fragments in the Thunder Celestial Realm had disappeared forever. This dramatic change terrified the few all-heaven star system cultivators on the fragment. They all tried like crazy to leave this fragment. The fear of death made them lose their wit. However, not many could escape the collapse of a fragment. The collapse of the fragment caused a vortex that looked like it was going to devour everything. Far away, one could see the thunder chains being sucked toward the center of the vortex. These chains were pulled until they were straight. Their movement immediately affected the connected fragments. A loud rumble echoed across the Thunder Celestial Realm, and then the entire Thunder Celestial Realm began to slowly move. However, the person who caused all of this didn't care about any of this. Even if the entire Thunder Celestial Realm collapsed, he wouldn't care. All he wanted was his daughter. Little brat Wang Lin, you wouldn't be able to escape next time. The red figure turned and disappeared with a single step. This person was the Blood Ancestor. Ever since arriving at the Thunder Celestial Realm, he didn't seek any treasures and moved as fast as possible across various fragments. Every time he arrived at a fragment, he would scan it with his divine sense and then leave. The sky was dim, and there were sometimes flashes of restriction light coming from the sky. Looking up from the ground, the sky wasn't tall at all, and combined with the darkness, it gave off a powerful sense of oppression. On the ground, there were many small hills that craved a rugged valley. The surroundings were very quiet. Spatial cracks would occasionally appear in the sky and release cold, howling wind. This was the only sound here. An altar about 100 feet tall stood there with numerous steps leading to the top. The altar was damaged and had many cracks, including several that even extend to the top. At this moment, a flash of light appeared on the platform at the top of the altar and two figures appeared. Wang Lin stepped out with an extremely gloomy expression. His mood was still affected by what had happened before. What happened before made him realize just how close death was. If it wasn't for him having the spell with the third eye, the situation would be been bad. Similarly, if Li Yuan's annihilation restriction wasn't there, even with the transfer array before him, he still wouldn't have been able to escape. Blood Ancestor Wang Lin frowned. At this moment, Li Yuan also walked out from the transfer array. Blood was coming out of his mouth when he appeared. He immediately sat down and began to cultivate. While Wang Lin pondered, he sat down and protected Li Yuan. At the same time, his divine sense spread out and observed the area. Shortly after, he withdrew his divine sense, and his express became even more gloomy. The spatial rifts in the sky could devour divine sense. Once his divine sense spread out, it could also attract those spatial rifts. Although it is like this, at least this place is safe. Wang Lin silently looked at the distant valley and began to ponder. The Blood Ancestor actually came to the Alheaven star system when he appeared. He didn't even give me a chance to speak and tried to capture me. He was obviously ready to search my soul, to find where Yao Shishui's Wang Lin touched his bag of holding. If I hand over Yao Shishui, will the Blood Ancestor still come after me? Wang Lin pondered for a moment, and the Celestial Guard walked out to guard Li Yuan. Then he waved his hand and cut off his surroundings. After that, he slapped his bag of holding and a restriction ball flew out. It grew to the size of a person and opened up like a lotus. When the restriction ball opened, Yao Shisue's long hair covered her shoulders as she sat in the lotus position. The 100 years of imprisonment had made her rather fragile. At this moment, her eyelashes moved, and she opened her eyes. When she saw Wang Lin, her eyes showed confusion for a moment, but it was immediately replaced with clarity. There was no joy or anger in her expression, as she calmly looked at Wang Lin. After a long time, her mouth revealed a hint of mockery, and she said, "I can feel the remnant of Father's blood spell. I can also feel your fear." Wang Lin silently stared at Yao Shishui. "Do you want to let me go? Or do you want to beg me to ask my father to not kill you, Wang Lin? Am I correct?" The mockery from Yao Shishui's mouth became even stronger. "I can let my father spare your life because I won't let you die so easily." The calmness disappeared from Yao Shishui's eyes and was replaced with a deep sense of hatred. Wang Lin frowned and said, "So you're saying that whether I let you go or not, my fate is the same?" Yao Shishui looked at Wang Lin and coldly said, "You won't dare to kill me, because killing me is the same as freeing me. If you seal me somewhere, you will have to face my father as eternal pursuit. One day, my father will find you and I'll escape." As Wang Lin stared at Yao Shishui, his eyes became cold. He quickly formed a few more restrictions that landed on Yao Shishui's body. The restriction ball shrank once more into a ball of light, and Wang Lin put it away inside his bag. He then stood up, looked up into the distance, and began to ponder. Let you go or not let you go, that does not depend on me, but on the Blood Ancestor. Wang Lin's eyes were fierce. Then, with a thought, he removed the surrounding restriction and looked at Li Yuan. A moment later, Li Yuan slowly opened his eyes and let out a mouth of foul air. He slowly opened his eyes, revealing fear, and asked, Brother Shu, who is that person? Wang Lin let out a sigh. After retreating a few steps, he clasped his hands at Li Yuan and said, I have burdened Brother Li on this matter. That person is called the Blood Ancestor. His cultivation is unfathomable and I have some grievance with him. When you and I leave, you should go first before you get any more implicated. Li Yuan wryly smiled and said, Brother Shu, that person's cultivation is no ordinary second-step cultivation. My annihilation restriction is only at the 4th level, but even though I used it with the restriction heart, he was still able to escape. I fear this person's cultivation level is higher than the Nirvana Shatterer stage. He's at least at the Nirvana Cleanser stage with this cultivation. It is a top-tier existence in the Al-Heaven star system. How did you provoke such a person? Alas, if my annihilation restriction had reached the 7th level, then I might have been able to seal him. Wang Lin was calm as he slowly said, Brother Li, let us find the exit first. We can talk once we leave. Li Yuan let out a sign. After pondering for a moment, he said, although that person's cultivation level is high, if we don't provoke him, it is not as if there aren't any ways to avoid him. Forget it. Let's us do what you said and look for an exit first. After he spoke, he stood up and looked around. Wang Lin slowly said, as he looked at the valley in the distance, you can spread out your divine sense, as there are spatial cracks that devour it. Li Yuan's eyes revealed a strange light. He jumped off the altar and grabbed a handful of dirt. After taking a closer look, he moved forward and jumped onto a tree. After breaking off a branch, he put it in his mouth and the strange light in his eyes became even stronger. Brother Shu, let me borrow your puppet. Li Yuan slowly flew into the air and spatial cracks immediately appeared in the air as if they wanted to devour him. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. When he saw Li Yuan's actions, he felt that Li Yuan had just discovered something new. With a thought, the Celestial Guard immediately jumped up next to Li Yuan. If a crack was to appear, the Celestial Guard would immediately punch the void to create a vortex to diffuse the crack. Although the effect wasn't good, it still had some effect. As Li Yuan flew higher and higher, more spatial cracks appeared. The Celestial Guard was like a golden whirlwind that surrounded Li Yuan and gave off a constant streams of rumbles. As Li Yuan rose into the air, he looked into the distance. His eyes were filled with shock and a hint of disbelief. Just at this moment, a crack several times larger than normal appeared below him. The crack that suddenly appeared gave off a powerful suction force that tried to devour Li Yuan. Li Yuan's expression changed, and even more cracks appeared beside him. With so many cracks, not even the Celestial Guard was fast enough. They suddenly fell into a crisis. Wang Lin stepped forward and slapped his bag of holding, causing the mountain and river screen to appear. The mountain and river painting covered the sky and immediately absorbed most of the spatial cracks. Wang Lin took this opportunity to charge forth and drag Li Yuan back. At the moment the crack below Li Yuan attempted to devour them, the two and the Celestial Guard instantly returned back to the ground. The painting in the sky looked as if it was torn with many small openings and looked as if it was damaged. Wang Lin's expression was serious as he waved his right hand and the painting in the sky disappeared. The screen returned to his hand and he put it away inside his bag. Brother Shu, do you know what this place is? Li Yuan's face revealed excitement and his eyes were still filled with disbelief. He took a deep breath and excitedly said, Brother Shu, Celestials rarely use bags of holding. In general, they often opened up their own spaces. Once the Celestials die, these spaces do not collapse, but it is very difficult to open them once more. Wang Lin was startled, and his expression immediately changed. He asked, Does Brother Li mean to say that our current location is within a Celestial storage space? Li Yuan laughed. His eyes were filled even more excitement, and he nodded. Yes, it must be that this place is quite old, and that the space became unstable, so cracks appeared. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for us to enter here. The dirt here was moved here from outside. Not even the mountain and tree belong here. They were all brought in from outside. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a mysterious light, and he slowly said, Brother Li, if this place were to collapse, would everything inside shatter with it? Li Yuan was startled and he nodded. Yes, this place is not a fragment like the outside. Once this place collapses, a powerful force will immediately cause everything inside to collapse as well, leaving nothing behind. However, Brother Bu can be at ease, because if there are no external interferences, then this place shouldn't collapse. Unless you could, as Li Yuan spoke, he suddenly thought of something and sucked in a breath of cold air. Wang Lin's eyes became cold, and he softly said, "If that is so, then perhaps I can set up a trap to deal with the blood ancestor." Quickly approaching 3,900 words, Leo fierce as a tiger, wishing for sharing, for likes on the video, for channel followers. Chapter 757, Beast Bones. Li Yuan's eyes revealed admiration, and he was shocked by Wang Lin's bold idea. After all, the difference in cultivation levels was simply too big. If it was someone else, even Li Yuan himself, the first thing they would think of was to escape, even if it meant escaping to the edge of the world, or hiding in remote places for hundreds or even thousands of years. As long as they could escape that powerful cultivator, it would be worth it. He wouldn't even think about how to resist, because the difference was as big as heaven and earth. In Li Yuan's view, Wang Lin's view was close to madness but at the same time ingenious. If planned correctly, it might really succeed. Thinking about this, Li Yuan's heart pounded. The stimulation caused by the temptation of killing a cultivator, at least at the Nirvana cleanser stage, made his blood flow increase and his heart pound. "Brother Shu, we're all but trying to kill a god." As Li Yuan said, this was almost equal to trying to kill a god. Although the blood ancestor might not match a celestial general, he would have still been considered a powerhouse in the celestial realm before it was destroyed. None of the lower-level cultivators would dare to fight against him. Wang Lin licked his lip and said, "I still require Brother Li's help on this matter. After the event is over, I'll definitely reward Brother Li." Li Yuan pondered a bit. The excitement from before had made his throat dry. Now he looked at Wang Lin and said, "Brother Li doesn't need to thank me. What you saved was not just me, but generations of the Li family. Isn't he just killing a god? How could I not help with such an exciting thing?" Wang Lin's eyes became cold and he slowly said, "That blood ancestor is not that easy to kill, so this will require careful planning. Before we act, Brother Li can leave first." Li Yuan pondered and said, "This matter is easy, but Brother Shu, before this, we should search this storage space so we don't leave any treasures behind. I'll also set up several restrictions at key point to cause the collapse." The two of them smiled at each other. They no longer wasted time talking and moved forward. The sky wasn't the only place where spatial cracks would appear. Some would even appear on the ground. However, with how cautious the two of them were, they safely moved forward toward the valley ahead. The valley had mountains with many trees growing on them. As they walked by, Wang Lin stopped, looked at the mountain, and pondered. He placed his right hand against the mountain and quickly spread out and retrieved his divine sense. When Li Yuan flew up into the sky earlier, he saw 2 mountains and 3 valleys. Right now, Wang Lin was looking at the mountain, and he felt an aura similar to the celestial mountain inside his bag. With an idea in mind, Wang Lin withdrew his right hand. Not long after, the first valley appeared before the two of them. The entrance of the valley was very large, about several dozen feet wide. At a glance, there was nothing inside, but there was a thin layer or mist that gave off an illusory feeling. At the entrance of the valley, Wang Lin and Li Yuan stopped to carefully observe the valley. "There is a simple restriction here. It won't be hard to crack it." Li Yuan's hand formed a seal, and several restrictions appeared. These restrictions emitted light as they went into the mist within the valley. A rustling sound echoed and the mist quickly dissipated without a trace. Li Yuan smiled and was about to step forward. Just at this moment, Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he grabbed Li Yuan and said, "Brother Li, wait!" Li Yuan was startled and looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression didn't change as the celestial guard behind him charged out without any hesitation. However, the moment the celestial guard entered, the mist suddenly reappeared. The mist formed arrows and shot them toward the celestial guard. There was a series of loud explosions. Even with the celestial guard's powerful body, it was pushed back by the arrow. It wasn't until the celestial guard was pushed outside the valley that the mist settled down again. Li Yuan felt ashamed. He was not a reckless person, but he was just too self-confident in his restriction. He let out a wry smile and said, "The owner of this storage space was too insidious. This restriction was obviously set up to kill someone who is confident in their restrictions like me." Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and with a thought the celestial guard charged out once more. This time its body was glowing gold, and the moment it stepped into the valley it threw a punch. The powerful punch created a huge vortex that immediately stirred up all the mist arrows flying at it. Wang Lin immediately stepped into the valley without hesitation, and Li Yuan immediately followed. After entering the valley, Li Yuan immediately created several restrictions that landed within the valley. Then Li Yuan began to deduce as he looked around the valley. Often he would deduce a location and lay down a restriction there. Wang Lin didn't look at Li Yuan. After he entered the valley, he waved his right hand. The thunder inside his origin soul rushed out and formed a ball of thunder in his hand. The ball of thunder charged out toward the vortex created by the celestial guard. With a bang, the ball of thunder entered the vortex and thunder immediately filled the vortex. The vortex seemed to have frozen in place and began absorbing all the mist around it. Brother Shu, I have marked the restriction eyes in the south and east corner. Once those collapse, the restriction in the valley will break. Li Yuan's arms spread out, and restrictions appeared in each hand as he charged toward the cliff to the southeast. With a thought, Wang Lin commanded the celestial guard to charge south toward where Li Yuan said the restriction eye was. Just before Li Yuan's restriction landed, the celestial guard S-punch landed on the cliff. At the same time, thunder condensed in Wang Lin's right hand and shot out toward the restriction marked by Li Yuan to the east. The thunder accurately landed on the restriction eye before Li Yuan's restriction. Two loud explosions echoed, and the restrictions placed by Li Yuan suddenly erupted at once. A huge whirlwind appeared within the valley and swept away all the mist. A moment later, the whirlwind disappeared, and the valley returned to normal, revealing a scene that couldn't be seen before. A black short sword was stabbed into the ground, and around it were 8 ferocious beast skulls. A faint mist was coming from the 8 skulls and formed a circle around the short sword. Li Yuan looked at the short sword and slowly said, "Presumably this is the treasure stored in the first valley. Brother Shu, do you want the short sword or the surrounding 8 beast skulls?" Wang Lin took a glance and could tell that this short sword was not normal. However, Li Yuan was of great help to him, and he didn't want to take something he liked. He laughed and said, "This short sword is probably not normal, and breaking this restriction was largely thanks to Brother Li. I merely helped a bit, so I'll take these 8 skulls." With that, Wang Lin waved his sleeves and the 8 skulls immediately flew into his hands. He scanned them with his divine sense and was immediately startled. But on the surface, Wang Lin was calm as he put them away. Li Yuan smiled as he grabbed the short sword. He looked at Wang Lin and laughed. "Many thanks, Brother Shu." Not far after traveling through the first valley, they saw the entrance to the second valley. The entrance was much smaller than the first valley's entrance. The closer they got to the second valley, the more frequent the cracks appeared, making them have to be extra careful while traveling. However, when they were 5 kilometers from the second valley, there was no road left. There were simply too many cracks in these last 5 kilometers. They quickly appeared all over the road, blocking off all paths and making it impossible to get through. Li Yuan frowned. If they were restrictions, he would have been able to break them, but these weren't restrictions at all. After pondering a bit, Li Yuan said, "Brother Shu, this might be a bit troublesome. We can teleport at all inside the storage space." Wang Lin looked at the valley entrance in the distance and slowly said, "Brother Li, wait here for a moment. I have a way to enter this place." Wang Lin took a deep breath and sat down in the lotus position. His 2 fingers quickly pointed at several locations on his body. Every time he pointed at a spot, his face would turn slightly redder. At the end, when Wang Lin pointed the 9th time, his face was fiery red. Wang Lin slowly stood up and inhaled. The fiery red on his face immediately disappeared. Just at this instant, he slapped his bag of holding and the mountain and river screen appeared. The painting immediately stretched more than 10,000 feet, and all the cracks disappeared as if they were patched. At the moment the mountain and river painting appeared, the celestial guard grabbed Wang Lin and mercilessly threw him forward. This throw used almost all of the celestial guard's strength, so Wang Lin's speed reached a terrifying level. In an instant, he charged out more than 2.5 kilometers. However, there were simply too many cracks. The moment the mountain and river painting appeared, countless tears appeared on the painting. These openings were like large mouths that wanted to devour Wang Lin. Wang Lin was able to get this far due to borrowing the power of the celestial guard. Before that force was gone, Wang Lin released a blood glow, and the spell he had saved in his body burst forth, causing him to shoot out at an unimaginable speed once more. His body flashed blood red, and his speed increased. It then flashed again, and he became even faster. In the blink of an eye, his body flashed blood red 9 times, and his speed was as fast as teleportation. This escape spell that used the bloodlight was the fastest escape spell he had learned from the old man from the demon spirit land. However, this spell couldn't be used unless his cultivation was at the peak of the late stage of Ascendant, or else his body would explode. In an instant, Wang Lin's figure appeared at the entrance of the second valley. His face was pale and he almost fell over. He waved his right hand, and the mountain and river screen returned to his hand. Looking back, he could see Li Yuan's figure 5 kilometers away. Tears streaming long, wishing for the like button for the video. Chapter 758, Relics of Celestials. Wang Lin looked at the entrance of the second valley, and from where he was standing, it looked empty. He took a few steps forward and carefully looked around. Then his right hand formed a seal, and a restriction flew out. This restriction split into 14 parts in the air and shot into the valley. Wang Lin's eyes shined as he watched the restrictions enter and silently disappear as if they were eaten. There wasn't any ripple at all. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. After hesitating for a bit, his eyes were filled with resolve. His right hand began forming restrictions once more. However, this time he spent more time and formed dozens of restrictions. When they shot out, each of them split into 14. Those restrictions formed the shape of plum blossoms and flew toward the entrance. Wang Lin immediately followed them, and at the moment the restrictions entered the valley, his third eye opened. With a flash of red light, Wang Lin was able to see an invisible light screen at the entrance. The moment the plum blossoms touched the light screen, a devil shadow appeared and immediately swallowed them. With the help of the third eye, Wang Lin could clearly see the light screen and the devil shadow, which was formed by almost transparent specks of light. Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and he immediately backed up. With a thought, the plum blossoms also retreated with him. The devil shadow seemed to hesitate before chasing after the restrictions. At this moment, the light screen at the entrance became thin and the devil shadow extended. Wang Lin felt a sting from between his eyebrows. This was the sign that the third eye had reached its limit. He charged forward without any hesitation. He moved very fast and passed by the devil shadow in an instant, arriving directly before the thinning light screen. At the moment he touched the light screen, Wang Lin raised his finger and moved Ling Tianhu's sword energy to his finger. He didn't release it, but kept it inside his finger and pressed down on the light screen. The light screen trembled and then spread out, forming a gap. Wang Lin directly charged in without any hesitation. All of this happened in a short period of time. The invisible devil shadow jerked back and let out a silent roar. Then all of the specks of light gathered on its body and charged toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's scalp felt numb as a cold wind that seemed to come from the depths of hell blew towards him. His third eye couldn't be maintained for long and had already automatically closed. Now that he entered the valley, the scene was completely different from what he saw from the outside. The earth of the valley was brown and countless skeletons covered the earth. They were everywhere, at least tens of thousands. There were some strange bugs drilling inside some of the skeletons. It was as if they were gnawing on the bones, giving off waves of crunching sounds as they did so. There were 8 short swords stabbed into the ground at the center of the valley. The looks and auras of these short swords were exactly the same as the one before. It was clear that they belonged to the same set. At the center of the 8 short swords there was a huge skull of a beast. It had 4 ferocious bone spurs pointing out, and gave off a grim aura. Wang Lin didn't hesitate to charge into the valley, and reach for the beast skull. At this moment, the 8 short swords immediately released sword energy and shot toward Wang Lin. Before Wang Lin were the rays of sword energy, and behind him was the devil shadow. At this moment of crisis, Wang Lin didn't panic, and his eyes were calm. As the sword energy closed in, his finger pointed forward. Stop spell. This spell didn't only stop people. Those short swords weren't ordinary objects, but the stop spell wasn't ordinary either. Although Wang Lin as he can stopped them for long due to his cultivation level, he could still stop them for a moment. The moment he stopped the short swords, Wang Lin charged directly at the beast bone. The invisible devil shadow immediately chased after Wang Lin. Although he could see the devil shadow, he felt a cold aura surrounding him. He was waiting for this moment. Because he couldn't keep the third eye up, and his divine sense couldn't find it, if he wanted to deal with it, the moment it tired to devour him was the perfect moment. Wang Lin didn't turn around, but the shadow of a whip flashed between his eyebrows. The karma whip appeared before him and lashed out, causing a muffled groan to come from the void. At the same time, Wang Lin immediately felt the cold aura around him scatter. He didn't stop, and everything moved as smooth as flowing water. His hand formed a seal and placed it on the beast bone before he picked it up and threw it into his bag. All of this was done in an instant. At this moment, the 8 short swords regained their freedom and whistled after Wang Lin. The valley wasn't too large, and he couldn't fly too high. In such a narrow place, Wang Lin was in somewhat of a sorry state when dodging the short swords. The invisible devil shadow seemed to have intelligence and had concealed its cold aura. It often only revealed itself the moment it was about to devour Wang Lin, and Wang Lin was nearly swallowed. In addition, it had blocked the exit, preventing Wang Lin from leaving. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. The short swords behind him scattered and came at him from 8 different directions. The sword energy coming from them all contained celestial spiritual energy. They were intertwined together to form a sword formation filled with killing intent. If this was it, it wouldn't be such a problem. After spending some time, Wang Lin would be able to leave. However, at the moment he picked up the beast's bone, green mist started coming out from the countless skeletons that covered the ground. The green mist formed various shadows that charged toward Wang Lin. In addition to the mist, those bugs that were whining on the bones seemed to be stimulated by something and rushed toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's scalp went numb. Right now it seemed like there was no escape, as the entire valley was sealed. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and became fierce. Nothing here was naturally formed. It was all brought in from the outside. That means the mountain has no foundation. Wang Lin moved to the side and avoided the short swords, green mist, and bugs as he closed in on the cliff of the mountain. He let out a roar, and his right hand contained all the celestial spiritual energy and thunder in his body as he smashed his hand down. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly echoed across the valley. Large pieces of the mountain fell and kicked out endless amounts of dust while celestial spiritual energy spread out in all directions. Li Yuan, who was still 5 kilometers away, was completely stunned. He didn't knew what was going on inside, but he could clearly feel the ground shake and saw countless pieces of the mountain falling off. The celestial guard next to Li Yuan was connected to Wang Lin. He stepped to the side and punched the mountain without any hesitation. There was another loud rumble. Li Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. He vaguely guessed Wang Lin's idea, and his heart started beating like crazy. He revealed a wry smile and thought that fellow cultivator Shu's ideas were sometimes too shocking. If it was with only Wang Lin's strength, he could shake the mountain but not break it. However, the celestial guard was different. Its body was extremely strong, and after that punch, the mountain's trembling became more intense. In the valley, Wang Lin's eyes were bloodshot as he grabbed the mountain and pulled it up. At the same time, on the other side, the celestial guard was under more pressure. It buried its hands into the mountain and lifted the mountain up 10 feet. The loud rumble echoed across the valley, and even the entire storage space began to tremble. The celestial guard lifted the mountain and went under it. Its body released a golden glow, and it completely carried the mountain on its back. The violent vibrations affected the valley, causing the 8 short swords to pause. The green mist completely ignored Wang Lin and charged out under the mountain that was lifted up. Even the insects did the same. Popping sounds came from the celestial guard's body. It seemed to have gone crazy as it let out a growl and pushed the mountain up several dozen feet more. No matter how many spatial cracks appeared, they were crushed by the impact of the mountain. After lifting it up to a certain height, the celestial guard threw the mountain down. The earth shook, the storage space looked like it was about to collapse, and even more cracks appeared. The mountain fell from the sky and landed on the ground where all the cracks were, completely smashing them. Wang Lin used this opportunity to rush out from the valley. Even the invisible devil shadow disappeared without a trace, and no one knew where it had gone. Wang Lin grasped for air after rushing out of the valley and looked ahead. He could see that the third valley was also affected. At this moment, countless flashes of restriction light came from the third valley. It was apparent that many restrictions had collapsed due to the mountain. I fear the celestial that owned the storage space would have never thought that someone would shake the mountain to break the restrictions here. Wang Lin adjusted his body for a bit before he rushed toward the third valley. His goal was the ancient god leather armor. Since the first 2 valleys didn't have it, then it was very likely in the third valley. Li Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air and the shock in his eyes gradually calmed down. He chased after Wang Lin with a wry smile. As for the Celestial Guard, it had used too much energy. It turned into a phantom and fused with Wang Lin as shadow to recover. Wang Lin and Li Yuan charged toward the third valley one after the other. They got closer and closer, and shortly after, they arrived before the third valley. This place was seriously damaged. The originally narrow entrance were pulled open. Countless restriction lights flashed nonstop. At a glance, Wang Lin was able to see a temple inside the valley. This temple wasn't too large, but it was seriously damaged. The door was even gone. There were 2 skeletons inside, and one of them was wearing the ancient god leather armor. As for the other skeleton, it had nothing, but there was a flash of gold coming from its right hand that had pierced through the skull of the skeleton wearing the ancient god leather armor. The skull was filled with cracks. It was apparent it had been crushed by that grab. Although he didn't see the battle, he could imagine the fierce fight the 2 skeletons had just from looking at them. Wang Lin's right hand reached out, and the ancient god leather armor flew off the skeleton and into his hand. The moment he touched the leather armor, he immediately felt a bloody and sorrowful feeling. Upon closer inspection, the leather armor was very rough and gave off an ancient aura. Even now there was the residue of a powerful aura in it, as if it was telling everyone how powerful the owner was. Li Yuan walked forward and arrived next to the other skeleton. He stared at the golden fingers of the other skeleton. Then he took a deep breath, squatted down, and broke off the fingers one by one. When he raised his head, he glanced into the temple without a door, and his pupils immediately shrank. He shouted, "Brother Shu, look!" Wang Lin raised his head, took a few steps forward, and looked into temple. Even with his mental fortitude, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He scanned the temple to determine if it was safe before he entered. Li Yuan was beside Wang Lin, and he also stepped into the temple. The temple was divided into 2 floors. The first floor had no place for worship and was completely empty. There were several murals hanging on the walls. There were a total of 9 murals. Looking at them one by one, Li Yuan's eyes were filled with a strange light. He muttered, What kind of spell is this? How can there be such a large person? It is possible these stories in the pictures were made up. Those paintings clearly painted a huge giant with 8 stars on its forehead. He was surrounded by countless celestials armed with various treasures that attacked him like crazy. The celestials' bodies were really insignificant compared to the giant. The giant's eyes were filled with cold indifference, but the paint was so attentive that even the exhaustion within that cold gaze could be clearly felt. All 9 murals were like this. 8-star ancient god Wang Lin silently pondered as he looked up at the second floor. He let out a sigh and walked up, leaving Li Yuan muttering to himself on the first floor. After all, not many people knew of the ancient gods. The second floor was rather simple. There was only a table with yellow parchment paper spread out and a few brushes next to it. It was easy to imagine that the master of this place liked painting. Not far away from the table was a censer, but there was only dust remaining inside it. Wang Lin arrived next to the table and saw a paper was being held down by a paperweight. This paperweight gave off waves of celestial spiritual energy, so it was obvious it wasn't ordinary. However, Wang Lin didn't look at the paperweight, but at the paper. The 16th year of the 27th era of the Celestial Realm. The first war between the Ancient Order and the Celestial Realm ended in victory. My magic treasure was broken and needs to be refined here. However, due to my exploits, I was rewarded a piece of its skin and made a suit of leather armor from it. The 19th year of the 27th year of the Celestial Realm. A shocking change occurred. The Celestial Emperor went crazy and died, pointing at the sky. I personally saw everything. That scene that shouldn't have existed when the Celestial Emperor died. Ever since I became a Celestial, I never feared, even when battling against the ancient god. However, at that moment, I became timid and scared. I saw what should have never been seen. As most of the Celestials battled, I escaped, and there was a pair of eyes following me. I had to paint what I saw. The handwriting became very sloppy at the end. It was easy to see how anxious the person writing this was. I drew it, but what is this? What did I paint? The note ended here. Wang Lin's eyes became serious. After pondering for a moment, he sat down before the table and picked up the brush. He wanted to feel exactly what happened when the Celestial drew this. The like button for the VIDEO is in danger. Urgently wishing for the like button for the VIDEO's aid. Chapter, precise and ready. Wang Lin held the brush and slowly closed his eyes. After a long time, he suddenly opened his eyes and his hand began writing according to the text. He gradually found a trace of what the celestial was feeling. His mind gradually became anxious as he wrote. This was a feeling of hesitation and confusion mixed together. This aura remained in this room even to this day. Finally, Wang Lin's right hand suddenly stopped in the air. He looked up outside through the window on the second floor. This celestial had just finished the painting, but he became even more confused. After leaving these words, there was a change. Someone must have arrived. Wang Lin put down the brush and looked outside. He more or less figured out some clues. After looking at the paper, he waved his right hand and the paper burst into flames. After burning it clean, Wang Lin put away the paperweight. When he walked down from the second floor, he saw Li Yuan taking down the paintings from the first floor and putting them inside his bag. Wang Lin hesitated a bit before saying, "Brother Li, you must be careful about where you store the paintings. You mustn't let outsiders see them. Otherwise, it will cause a great catastrophe." Li Yuan seemed to realize something and nodded. Li Yuan asked, "There should be more magical treasures or jades inside this storage space. Is Brother Shu not going to look a bit longer?" Wang Lin shook his head. "Brother Li can look for them." After seeing the contents of the paper, his heart was filled with the mysteries of why the celestial realm had collapsed. In particular, after seeing the second valley, Wang Lin felt that even if there were treasures remaining, there would be very few. This was because the most important treasure, the beast bone, was already taken by him. This beast bone was obviously the broken treasure mentioned in the note that was being refined. Okay, while I place down the collapse restrictions, I can also look around. I also need to find an exit out of here, and if there isn't T1, it will take some time to connect one. Li Yuan clasped his hands at Wang Lin and looked up at the second floor. He didn't go up, but walked out the temple. Wang Lin sat down outside the temple. He took out the 9 beast bones and began to slowly study them. Time flew by, and 1 month passed in the blink of an eye. Li Yuan didn't have much harvest in this month, so after a while, he stopped looking. However, what was worth mentioning was the 8 short swords that attacked Wang Lin. Li Yuan used some unknown method and managed to control them. Wang Lin was very shocked about this, but when he considered Li Yuan's restrictions, he seemed to understand. In this 1 month of time, Li Yuan placed restrictions at all the collapse points he calculated inside the storage space. Li Yuan seemed to show even more interest in plotting against the blood ancestor than Wang Lin. Every time he thought about how his restrictions could possibly help kill a god, Li Yuan would become short of breath. Although he was very alert, he had one glaring weakness, and that was his blind self-confidence in his family's restrictions. In addition, he also considered what would happen if the blood ancestor didn't die, so he made his decision. He would only secretly help in this matter but not participate. After the arrangement was finished, he decided he would separate from Wang Lin. After all, this matter was too big, even if he was indebted to Wang Lin. In truth, to help in secret was also his limit. It was already very difficult for him to even help at this point. On this day, Li Yuan returned to the temple with a serious expression. He looked at Wang Lin with a complex gaze and let out a heavy sigh. Then he waved his right hand and a crystal restriction ball flew out and floated before Wang Lin. "Brother Shu, I have placed 1,465 collapse points using the annihilation restriction. All you need to do is activate this restriction ball with your celestial spiritual energy, and this storage space will completely collapse." Wang Lin held the restriction ball and scanned it with his divine sense. After making sure there were no problems, he clasped his hands and said, "Many thanks." Li Yuan's expression darkened and he said with hesitation, "Brother Shu, in fact, I have a method if you don't wish to be found by the blood ancestor. All you have to do is hide inside a cave and not leave until that blood ancestor has forgotten his hate." Wang Lin calmly smiled and said, "I'll remember Brother Li's kindness. If there is no way to fight against the blood ancestor, then I might really have to trouble Brother Li." Li Yuan silently pondered, and after a long time he took out a jade. He handed the jade to Wang Lin and said, "Brother Shu, this is a record of my Li family's annihilation restriction. Although I can give you a piece of the restriction heart without being at the ancestral temple, studying it should help you. There are even several methods for hiding your aura." Wang Lin silently accepted it and nodded. Li Yuan let out a sigh as both his hands formed a seal and a transfer array appeared before him. This array was not stable. It seemed as if it could collapse at any moment. Brother Shu, this transfer array can only be opened 3 times. You have to be careful. Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin again as he stepped into the transfer array. He didn't look back but softly said, "If I didn't have any responsibilities tying me down, I would definitely stay and witness how my live family-ass restriction plotted against a Nirvana cleanser cultivator." Brother Shu, take care. Li Yuan's sigh echoed. His figure disappeared within the flashing transfer array. Wang Lin raised his head and his eyes became cold. He muttered to himself, "Blood ancestor Yao Shishui, even though both of you have blood soul pills, I am going to gamble this one time to see if you guys can completely revive under the power that can destroy everything from the collapsing space." Wang Lin had a bag of holding on him. This bag belonged to Yao Shishu, but he couldn't open it. He could only place restrictions on it to make the aura not spread out too far. In addition to this bag of holding, Wang Lin originally had a real blood soul pill, but it was used in his battle against the scattered devil. He knew that there was at least one other blood soul pill, but he couldn't open the bag. It is impossible for anyone to have many of these heaven-defying pills, even the blood ancestor. After many years of consumption, I fear that having even 1 or 2 is the limit for the blood ancestor. While he sneered, Wang Lin took out the restriction ball holding Yao Shishui. He no longer had any interest in asking questions, so he threw the restriction ball. It immediately flew out and was buried deep inside the distant mountain. After doing all of this, Wang Lin took a step and entered the transfer array. There was a flash of light and Wang Lin disappeared. "Blood ancestor, since you aren't willing to let me go, then I will do as Li Yuan said, try to kill a god." The like button for the VIDEO has dropped to 5th place. Tears brimming and wishing for the like button for the VIDEO. Chapter 75, Encountering the Enemy Again. Lu San and the group was stunned. They had never seen the middle-aged man act like this. He secretly moved a few steps away from Wang Lin and asked, "Sir, what about this little brother? Is he going to encounter that bloody disaster because of us?" Wang Lin's expression was calm. He looked at the middle-aged man but didn't say a word as Situ Nana's lazy voice floated into his ears. "This little baby is kind of interesting. His fortune-telling technique is pretty good. When it comes to normal people, he is able to see signs of their future, but when he wants to look into the future of U.S. cultivators, it's like struggling in the water. I sent him some memories of me wiping out a sect and he can handle it anymore." In just one breath of time, the middle-aged scholar was covered in sweat. His gaze toward Wang Lin was no longer neutral, but filled with fear. He heard Lu San's words and quickly said, "Nothing to do with little brother. My skill isn't good enough. I can see through it, see through it." With that, he repeatedly bowed with a bitter look on his face. The scene he saw before had already completely stunned him. That was not a normal world but a hell filled with blood. Those people in the scene were obviously not mortals. They were able to fly in the sky and destroy mountains. The middle-aged man grew up learning the fortune-telling technique, so he knew that immortals existed. He also knew that he mustn't get involved, or he will die. Lu San frowned and was about to speak when he suddenly heard scream. A head flew through the area and landed on the ground. It rolled until it stopped next to the fire. Lu San's expression changed greatly. He quickly stood up as he realized that this head belonged to someone who was patrolling the area. Yang San grabbed the head. He clenched his fist and said, "Egu, brother will get revenge for you." All of the guards took out their weapons and their killing intent spread to the surroundings. The dark-faced man stood next to Lu San and asked, "Who are you? Seems like you guys don't understand the rules at all." A dark laugh came from the distance. Following a rustling sound, dozens of black-clothed men appeared from the ground. They patted the dirt off their clothes as they stared at everyone. "Mountain-splitting Palm Lu San, give us the thing and we will leave immediately. Otherwise, no one will leave here alive." A skinny and old man walked out of the group of black-clothed men. Lu San's face was as calm as water. He said, "I was wondering who it was. It seems it says the Vulture Escort." The old man let out a laugh. "Man named Lu, there is no need to say pointless things. Your mighty escort officially went to carry out a shipment, but secretly brought back a 500-year-old ginseng. If you surrender it, you will all be safe. Don't let such a thing endanger your life." Lu San frowned. He looked at the people around him and thought, how does the Vulture Escort know that I was hiding the ginseng? It seems there are people in the same business with greedy hearts. With that, his gaze fell on Wang Lin and he sneered. He glanced at the dark-faced man. He clenched his hand and said, with a deep voice, whether or not I have the ginseng, are you going to steal it from me with your inferior martial arts skills? The dark-faced man got the message and secretly got behind Wang Lin. Wang Lin frowned. The middle-aged man quickly stopped the dark-faced man and said, "What are you doing? This little brother isn't the enemy." The dark-faced man was stunned and was unable to respond. Just at that moment, the old man let out a laugh. "Man named Liu, I can beat you, but our boss is going to act personally. You are a dead man." With that, he took a few steps back and said, "The boss has arrived." He immediately bowed on the ground. All of the black-clothed men became very excited. They all did the same as the old man and shouted, "The boss has arrived." A cold voice suddenly came from all sides. "Ring out the ginseng, or you will die." The moment the voice arrived, a fist-sized fireball flew into the circle of carriages. The extremely hot fireball hit one of the escort members. Before he could even scream, he was burned to death. At that moment, everyone in the escort was stunned. Some of them even lost their grips on their weapons and dropped them on the ground. Xianxia's eyes revealed a look of fear. What weapon is that?" he shouted. Heat surged around the fire, making the escort guards understand just how hot the fire was. Lu San's face was filled with shock. He took a few steps back and stared at the burned body, unable to say a word. The dark-faced man's eyes revealed extreme fear. He said while trembling, Immortal technique." The dark-faced man took the test to enter a sect when he was a kid. After he failed, he entered the martial arts world. The test was deeply ingrained in his mind, so when he saw the fireball, he immediately made the connection. The old man revealed a proud expression and said, "Of course our boss is an immortal. Why don't you quickly hand the ginseng over to us?" All of the members of the escort looked at Lu San. Their eyes revealed a cry for help. If it was normal people, they would have the courage to fight, but this was an immortal. All of the escort guards lost their will to fight. Lu San revealed a bitter look. He was about to speak when 3 more fireballs appeared in the air, motionless. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he became very interested. From the looks of the fireballs, the person who was casting them couldn't have been higher than the 3rd layer. He touched his chin and sent out his divine sense. He quickly found the person on a large tree not far away. "What is this?" Wang Lin muttered. He was stunned. The person was about 20 years old and was at the peak of the ND layer. He could almost break into the 3rd layer. The young man's face was gloomy and was covered in scars. At first glance, he looked very ferocious, but the more Wang Lin looked, the more familiar he looked. The middle-aged scholar sighed. "Lao Liu, give it to them. Even if the North family finds out, they wouldn't blame us. The enemy is an immortal. How could us mortals defend against him?" Lu San hesitated for a bit, then helplessly took out a small case and placed it on the ground. The moment the case landed on the ground, it rose into the air. However, it didn't fly to the vulture escort people, but into Wang Lin's hand. Forgot to mention, at the end of the month, wishing for the like button for the video. You are listening to a completely free audiobook on the Leo Audio YouTube channel. If you enjoy the story, please like the video to motivate the channel. Support Leo with a cup of coffee through the description link or on the screen. If you want to hear any other stories, just comment and let Leo know. Thank you very much for watching the video. Chapter 760 finally arrived. When he walked out of the transfer array, what appeared before him after the light faded was a foreign land. The sky was still gloomy and was filled with thunder. At a glance, he wasn't able to see the edge of the land. Although it was unfamiliar, it still had a familiar aura. This place was still the Thunder Celestial Realm. Li Yuan is very talented. Wang Lin looked into the distance. He rarely admires people, but he admired Li Yuan's ability to use various restrictions. It required a lot of knowledge about restrictions to be able to build a transfer array to leave the storage space of a celestial. Wang Lin knew that it would be very difficult for him to do this. After withdrawing his gaze, Wang Lin raised his hand and waved at the transfer array behind him. The transfer array shrank into a fist-sized crystal and was put inside his bag. He looked around before turning into a ray of light and flying into the distance. After flying for several days, Wang Lin secretly noted the area. He carefully landed on a mountain, and after determining there were no abnormalities nearby, he went underground. After diving deep into the mountain, He hid the bag he couldn't tee open that he got from Yao Shi's shoe. After setting a few more restrictions, Wang Lin carefully left. It would be too conspicuous for him to keep holding onto the bag, and it wouldn't help his plan. After hiding the bag, Wang Lin quickly moved underground until he was very far away and resurfaced on a plain. He looked back at the mountain in the distance before turning into a ray of light and flying off into the distance. He moved very fast and didn't stop anywhere on this fragment. Soon, he arrived at the chains on the edge of the fragment and quickly crossed it. After flying cautiously on the chain over the void, Wang Lin saw another fragment. He took a deep breath and went directly underground after reaching the new fragment. After finding a location, he began placing down restrictions. During this 1 month of flight, Wang Lin researched the restrictions on how to hide his aura that Li Yuan gave him. Wang Lin's research progressed extremely fast due to the threat of the blood ancestor closing in. He couldn't completely conceal himself from the blood ancestor. He could only make himself harder to detect. If it was under ordinary circumstances, he would eventually be found. But combined with Wang Lin's current plan, it might be possible for him to really stay hidden. Strands of restrictions appeared around him, forming a ball of restrictions, and he sat down inside. Just as the restriction ball was about to close, the celestial guard stepped out. Looking at the celestial guard, Wang Lin revealed a grim smile. He threw the transfer array crystal at the celestial guard and slowly closed his eyes. A portion of his divine sense split from his body and directly entered the celestial guard. This was one of the celestial guard's spells. It allowed the divine sense of the person who refined it to enter and control it. After the portion of Origin's soul flew out, Wang Lin's eyes began to close. Right before his eyes closed, one last restriction flew out from his hand and completed the restriction ball. The ball rapidly shrank until it disappeared in a flash of light. The celestial guard opened its eyes and its eyes became cold. It grabbed the transfer array crystal and swallowed it before quickly charging out from underground. After moving his body and getting over the discomfort of a few body, Wang Lin checked underground with his divine sense. He was unable to detect where his body was. If I didn't have the celestial guard, I wouldn't be able to deceive the blood ancestor. However, I am taking the initiative, and once he becomes aware of the Origin soul inside this body, he won't be able to avoid this attraction. Wang Lin lowered his head and looked at his body. He charged into the distance like a meteor with his divine sense spread out. He was like a bright light in the dark. If someone was looking for him, they would immediately be able to lock onto him. Wang Lin flew unbridled along the way. He had been suppressing his feelings since he came to the Al-Heaven star system. After all, he had escaped here, and those old monsters from the Alliance star system could have chased him over at any time. The reality of it all made him cautious. However, since the blood ancestor had already arrived and how strong this body was, Wang Lin decided to let go of his caution. Although the celestial guard couldn't compared to his original body, it was far stronger than any cultivator and even some body refining cultivators. As a result, Wang Lin naturally had an arrogant aura while he flew. Blood ancestor, now I am waiting for your arrival. Wang Lin's eyes were extremely cold. He was going to kill. His killing intent had reached the level of illusory yin because of his current body. Even if he encountered other cultivators, they would hesitate and avoid him. Wang Lin didn't even look for treasures as he quickly flew from fragment to fragment. Every time he arrived on a fragment, his divine sense would spread out like crazy. Time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, 5 months passed. Wang Lin charged through everything. Naturally, because he had important things to do, he didn't look for trouble. However, if those without eyes came looking for trouble, he would not hold back. The powerful body and the spell from Wang Lin's divine sense caused his strength to reach its peak. In these 5 months, he had gained a little prestige among the cultivators here. In particular, the power of the body that could match magical treasures caused many ascendant cultivators to avoid him on sight. Even illusory yin cultivators would frown and avoid him as well. However, Wang Lin wasn't moving blindly. He moved around the fragments near the one where his body was. This limited his movement and had 2 advantages. The first was that he wasn't moving around randomly and therefore wouldn't end up accidentally missing the blood ancestor. Second, he was indirectly protecting his body. After all, if he went too far and his body was found by the blood ancestor, then he would be on the defensive side. He was searching for the blood ancestor, and at the same time the blood ancestor was searching for him. The two became closer and closer. The blood ancestor was wearing a red robe as he moved through the void. One step from him was like teleportation, and he moved across the chains extremely fast. His expression was calm, as if he wasn't angry at all. However, his eyes became redder every day. With his cultivation, even if the heavens collapsed, his mood wouldn't change, but his only daughter, Xianxia, was his only weakness. He was willing to fight against the heavens and kill everything in his path for his daughter. Even if he had to choose between his daughter and reaching the third step, he might struggle and hesitate, but in the end he would choose his daughter. This was where he was completely different from the All-Seer and Ling Tianho. If it was the All-Seer, he would give up everything and choose the third step. For his own daughter, he was even willing to give up his own dignity, give up on the oath his dying father made him take, to never take half a step into the All-Heaven star system. Father, when you made me make the oath, why did you leave behind an All-Heaven stone? This question had existed in the blood ancestor's heart for a very long time. The blood ancestor calmly took a step and landed on the fragment. His divine sense spread out like a storm and covered the entire continent. However, at this moment his originally calm face became cold. He slowly raised his head and looked into the distance. His eyes revealed killing intent strong enough to almost become corporeal. Wang Lin. His killing intent was so powerful that a mountain in front of him was affected by this killing intent and immediately collapsed. As the rocks and dust flew everywhere, the blood ancestor took a step and disappeared without a trace. At the moment before the blood ancestor stepped foot on the fragment, Wang Lin moved like a meteor on the chain on the other side of the fragment. Just as he was about to arrive and spread out his divine sense, the sky suddenly darkened and dark clouds began gathering in the sky. Even the fragment began trembling. All of the cultivators on this fragment immediately felt this tremble in their souls, no matter what cultivation level they were at. Even illusory yin and corporeal yang cultivators were no different. The difference in cultivation levels made it impossible for them to resist. It was as if the heavens' might was descending. Wang Lin immediately moved and his eyes shined brightly as he stared into the distance. He revealed a cold smile. Yuvet finally arrived. There was a thunderous roar, and the clouds split apart as if there was a giant pair of hands ripping them apart. Blood-red light appeared and covered the land. The powerful divine sense was like a storm that swept across the entire fragment. This divine sense was too powerful. The second step spell contained within the fragment actually almost caused the fragment to collapse. The red light coming from the clouds before Wang Lin was even more bright. It was as if at this moment the fragment was surrounded by red light. It was as if it had been thrown into a blood pool. The red light condensed 1,000 feet before Wang Lin. In almost an instant, the figure condensed, revealing a red-haired and red-eyebrowed middle-aged man in red robes. This man was so handsome that even Xianfeng, Zhu Kezi's disciple and Liu Mei's senior, felt somewhat lacking compared to him. This man had a unique aura around him. When he appeared, he calmly looked at Wang Lin and didn't say a word. However, Wang Lin could clearly see a red fire that could burn the world hidden inside those calm eyes. The blood ancestor didn't waste any time with Wang Lin. He raised his right hand and pointed at Wang Lin. After he pointed, cracking sounds came from the sky as if it was being ripped open by that finger. That force charged straight for Wang Lin's forehead. Wang Lin stared at the blood ancestor. As the finger closed in, he slowly said, "If you kill me, even though Xianxia has the blood soul pill, she will surely die." I forgot to say, the latest 3 chapters are all 4,000-word major chapters. Is Leo that kind? So this is the moon god. Is it the like button for the VIDEO? Do you all also start the VIDEO? Chapter 761, Killing God. The blood ancestor coldly looked at Wang Lin. His finger didn't stop and continued to press down. The finger pressed down 3 inches from Wang Lin. A loud bang echoed the sky. Wang Lin coughed out a mouthful of blood and his body flew away like a broken kite. In the air, his body flipped a few times before he landed on the ground, causing the ground under him to crack. Wang Lin's body continued to back up. Every step he took would cause the ground to crack. After retreating 100 steps, he was finally able to stabilize his body. He was in an extremely sorry state, and blood was coming out from the corner of his mouth. There were countless cracks on the ground before him. It was like a sign of how powerful that finger was. The blood ancestor took 1 step and arrived 100 steps away from Wang Lin. He calmly said, I'll only give you 3 sentences. More blood flowed out from the corner of Wang Lin's mouth and many bones in his body were broken. The celestial guard's body was strong and this was the first time it had been this seriously injured, but Wang Lin smiled. This smile was extremely gloomy. I thought Blood Ancestor was really going to let that finger land regardless of Yao Shui's death and destroy everything. Wang Lin wasn't afraid at all. Although the Blood Ancestor was strong, he was not as strong as the heavens. Wang Lin was a heaven-defying cultivator. If he dared to defy the heavens, what was a mere Blood Ancestor? If the Blood Ancestor's finger had landed, Wang Lin believed the Celestial Guard would without a doubt die and his divine sense inside would immediately collapse as well. The Blood Ancestor's eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked into sky and said, "You still have 2 sentences." He really wanted to kill Wang Lin directly, and then soul search him for Yao Shishui's whereabouts. However, he couldn't help but be cautious. He knew that Wang Lin was extremely cunning, decisive, and ruthless. Otherwise, there was no way for Wang Lin to kick up such a storm in the demon spirit land. All those old monsters, including him, were played by this brat, and in the end they could only helplessly watch him disappear into the vortex. This person came with a clone, so he is naturally not afraid of me killing him. Once I really kill him, then his real body will immediately attack Jishu. The blood soul pill is not without flaws. Wang Lin wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth, tidied up his clothes, and slowly said, "Senior Blood Ancestor Yao Shishui is safe. In these hundreds of years, Junior didn't even touch a strand of her hair. Junior can give her back and let you reunite with your daughter. However, Senior has to let Junior go and promise to not trouble Junior anymore in the future." The Blood Ancestor withdrew his gaze from the sky and looked at Wang Lin. His eyes revealed no anger, but he calmly said, "Okay, this old man swears on his Tao that if you hand over my daughter, I won't kill you." Wang Lin stared at the Blood Ancestor, and after a long time, he let out a sigh. He couldn't tell if the person was lying or not. After silently pondering for a moment, Wang Lin opened his mouth and spat out a crystal. The crystal landed on the side and became a transfer array. This transfer array was not stable and showed signs of collapsing. Wang Lin slowly said, "Yao Shishui is inside this transfer array." He didn't play any more schemes with the Blood Ancestor. The Blood Ancestor had been cultivating for tens of thousands of years, so in terms of schemes, the Blood Ancestor could only be better than him. Not worse. Trying to scheme against such a person was pointless, and after Wang Lin understood this, his hidden trap became an overt plot. After throwing out the transfer array, Wang Lin retreated rapidly toward the void near the fragment. He moved very fast. He clearly was using his full cultivation. "Blood Ancestor, I gave you a chance. How this goes will depend not on me but on you. If you believe me, then go in first to show your sincerity and that your promise is true. Then I will be sincere once as well. Since you believe me, I'll believe you. However, if you don't enter the array and come after me, that means you don't believe me and your promise is false. Then don't blame me for being ruthless and killing a god." Wang Lin's eyes lit up. Unless he had to, he really didn't want to make the Blood Ancestor his enemy. If he hadn't been forced into a hopeless situation, he wouldn't have imprisoned Yao Shishui. He made Li Yuan make the transfer array only work 3 times to coordinate with his plan. The Blood Ancestor looked at the transfer array. With a scan of his divine sense, he immediately felt a trace of Yao Shishui aura. Although he couldn't see where the transfer array went, he knew his daughter's aura well. This transfer array indeed led to Yao Shishui. He took a step forward and arrived before the transfer array. His hand reached out, and the transfer array collapsed into countless specks of light. Then the specks of light condensed back into a crystal in his right hand. Shortly after, he suddenly turned around and gloomily looked at the rapidly retreating Wang Lin. He muttered, "How can I let you leave after only a few words when you trapped my daughter for hundreds of years? I don't even believe in Tao. How can I not kill you?" The killing intent he had been withholding burst forth. He took a step and immediately chased after Wang Lin. As Wang Lin escaped along the thunder chain into the void, he felt the powerful killing intent coming from behind him. He let out a sigh and his eyes became cold. "Blood Ancestor, since this is your choice, then don't blame me. It is not me being ruthless, you just want to let it go." As the blood ancestor chased after Wang Lin, his eyes were filled with killing intent. In a few steps he closed in and raised his hand. He mercilessly pressed down, and the entire void paused. The thunder chain under Wang Lin's feet instantly collapsed and cracked down from the middle. At the same time, the void immediately became a blood sea that surrounded Wang Lin. Refine! With a roar, the surrounding blood sea seemed to boil, and then it rushed toward Wang Lin. The sea was so fast that it entered Wang Lin's body in an instant. It entered the celestial guard and surrounded Wang Lin's divine sense within. An indescribable pain immediately spread throughout his body. The divine sense inside the celestial guard felt extreme pain, as if it was being torn apart piece by piece. The strength of the celestial guard's body shined at this moment. It was able to resist the refining of the blood sea and cause the process to slow down. This wasn't finished yet. A ray of bloodlight shot out and disappeared into the void. It didn't really disappear, but used a strange celestial power to break through the void and close in on where Wang Lin's body was hiding. The blood ancestor's hatred had reached a pinnacle. He wanted to refine Wang Lin's clone and the divine sense inside it. He could even refine to death the original body that was hiding somewhere with his spell. The fragment Wang Lin's origin body was hiding in was immediately covered in red. The ground was like the blood sea, and slowly gathered toward Wang Lin. The red light penetrated the earth and condensed into a red needle that charged toward Wang Lin. Once he was hit by that needle, Wang Lin's origin soul would collapse and immediately die. While hiding underground, Wang Lin suddenly opened his eyes. He took out the restriction ball Li Yuan gave him and without hesitation used his celestial spiritual energy to cause half of the restrictions inside the storage space to collapse. At the same time, he charged out from underground, and the needle chased closely after. Blood ancestor, I don't know if your daughter's origin soul can stay safe when that space collapses. Wang Lin's origin soul let out a muffled groan and let out these last words before it collapsed. The blood ancestor's expression changed as he almost immediately felt the fluctuations of space collapsing coming from the crystal. He didn't have time to deal with Wang Lin or the half-refined puppet. He threw down the crystal and placed down a seal to stabilize it. The crystal immediately turned into a transfer array. This was the third time it opened and the last time. When the transfer array opened, a destructive aura came out from inside. However, the blood ancestor was unable to think about it too much, and he gloomily stepped inside. The seal he placed played a big role in preventing the transfer array from collapsing after the blood ancestor used it to enter. The blood ancestor's figure disappeared. The moment he entered the storage space, his expression immediately changed greatly. With his knowledge, he immediately recognized this place as a storage space opened by a celestial. A chill appeared inside his heart. It had been countless years since he felt the threat of death. Even during the countless times he challenged the All-Seer, he never felt his scalp tingle like this. In the end, he was only a cultivator. Right now, he could clearly feel his heart beat faster and faster. Over the years, he gained a detailed understanding of the celestial storage spaces. He knew that if the storage space collapsed, it would destroy everything inside in an instant. Even if he used the blood soul pill, it still wasn't enough when facing this kind of destructive force. Only if he devoured all of the blood soul pills at once could he rely on the mysterious power inside and resist the destruction of this storage space. Damn it, how did this Wang Lin find a storage space? Even someone like the All-Seer can only depend on luck to find a place like this. Wang Lin, you and I can coexist. The blood ancestor almost broke his teeth. From the moment he entered, he could feel his daughter's aura. He charged straight for the valley and found the restriction ball trapping Xianxia in almost an instant. He didn't even have time to undo the restriction and quickly put away the restriction sphere. Right now, Wang Lin, who was being chased by the red needle spell from the blood ancestor, revealed a fierce expression. He had activated all of the restrictions inside the storage space to cause it to completely collapse. You want to kill me? Then I'll kill you here first. Wang Lin's finger pointed at 9 points of his body and moved even faster. The red needle behind him chased closely after. Holding Xianxia's restriction sphere, the blood ancestor moved like crazy. The calm he had before was completely gone. He now looked like a madman covered in a red glow. He charged like crazy toward the transfer array that he had solidified with his divine sense. The storage space around him began to collapse and the two mountains were immediately torn down. A power that could destroy everything instantly filled the area, and it was as if that power wanted to drown him. Wang Lin, if I escape, I swear to kill you, even if I need to go to the heaven or hell. It's been a long time since wishing for likes on the VIDEO. The little pig wishing for the like button for the VIDEO support. Chapter 762. Chance 1. The Blood Ancestor's voice was filled with killing intent, and it filled the storage space. The mountains were torn apart and the valleys melted. More than 1,000 restrictions activated, causing the storage space to enter its final stage of collapse. At this moment, the Blood Ancestor's eyes were bloodshot, and he was almost crazy. His speed was unimaginable. He immediately arrived next to the reinforced transfer array. It was like the storage space was being burned by a black flame behind him. The flame was ferocious and wanted to devour the Blood Ancestor. Just as the Blood Ancestor was about to step into the transfer array and leave, the expression of Wang Lin, who was being chased by the red needle, instantly darkened. Although his divine sense inside the Celestial Guard was destroyed, the Celestial Guard wasn't completely refined by the Blood Sea yet. Through his connection he had with the Celestial Guard, Wang Lin was able to see the transfer array flash, and the Blood Ancestor's figure was quickly condensing. Wang Lin knew that he would without a doubt die without any chance for survival if the Blood Ancestor escaped. Under the moment of crisis, he let out a sigh and made a decisive decision. I wasn't able to complete my promise. I'll make it up to you in the future. Outside the transfer array, the eyes of the Celestial Guard, who was trapped inside the Blood Sea, shined brightly. The light was so bright that it covered his whole body and burst forth along with a destructive aura. It was as if a storm was setting off in the Celestial Guard's body, and rays of golden light were shooting out from its body like swords. The self-explosion of an illusory yin cultivator created a terrifying destructive force that allowed the Celestial Guard to charge out from the Blood Ancestor's spell. Although the Blood Ancestor's spell no longer had control of the Celestial Guard, it was still extraordinary. As it refined the Celestial Guard, it managed to reduce the power of the self-explosion by nearly 60%. The Celestial Guard charged out with 40% of the self-explosion power, and arrived next to the transfer array. The moment the Blood Ancestor appeared, the Celestial Guard glowed like the sun. A powerful explosion erupted at this moment. Under the power of this destructive force, the transfer array immediately collapsed into specks of light and disappeared. Inside the storage space, half of the Blood Ancestor's body had entered the transfer array. He let out a roar and was forced out. He watched the transfer array rapidly dissipate. It was as if thousands of years were compressed into a single breath. At the moment of crisis, the Blood Ancestor's body emitted a strange light. He looked at the restriction ball Yao Shishu was in, and crushed it without any hesitation. Under the destructive force of the storage space, even if Yao Shishui ate a blood soul pill, it wouldn't be enough with just one. This was why the Blood Ancestor personally crushed the restriction sphere to let Yao Shishui revive. With the Blood Ancestor's understanding of the blood soul pill, he knew that she had already taken a blood soul pill. Behind him, the black flame came, and the red light shined from the Blood Ancestor like crazy. He wanted to postpone the collapse and buy time so Yao Shishui wouldn't be affected during her resurrection process. The Blood Ancestor opened his arms and his mid-stage nirvana cleanser cultivation burst forth without reserve. Waves of bloodlight came out from his body and blocked the black flames that were devouring everything. His body was instantly covered and the flames began burning him. Intense pain that he hadn't felt for tens of thousands of years filled his body. However, the Blood Ancestor didn't care. He focused all of his power into protecting the 30 feet before him to prevent Yao Shishui's divine sense from dissipating. Several breaths of time were like tens of thousands of years. Under the protection of her father suppressing the collapse, Yao Shishui's resurrection process wasn't affected by the collapse of the storage space. Red light filled the area where Yao Shishui hid her blood soul pill in the demon spirit land, and Yao Shishui's figure slowly appeared. After she appeared, she looked up at the sky. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and unforgettable killing intent. After seeing his own daughter's divine sense safely leave, the Blood Ancestor revealed a kind fatherly smile. Then his own body was surrounded by the black flames. At this moment he took out 3 blood soul pills. He didn't devour them but crushed them all. There were only 13 blood soul pills left. Most of them were with Xianxia, and the blood ancestor only had 3. The blood soul pills scattered, and a blue liquid came out from inside them. The blue liquid and black flames canceled each other out. At this moment, the entire storage space collapsed and everything inside disappeared. It didn't get thrown into nothingness, but completely collapsed without a trace. Wang Lin was moving extremely fast across the fragment he was hiding on. His body flashed blood red 9 times as he rapidly fled with the red needle chasing closely after. However, at the next instant, the red needle stopped chasing him and collapsed layer by layer until it almost dissipated completely. Wang Lin felt relief and found that his clothes were soaked in sweat. A gentle breeze immediately made him feel cold. Before him, the red needle was already half transparent and slowly disappeared. However, just as it was about to completely disappear, it stopped dissipating, turned around, and flew off into the distance. Not dead, Wang Lin's eyes were filled with terror and he charged out without thinking. His hand reached out and he spat out origin energy that formed a prison that trapped the red needle. The red needle let out a sharp whistle as if it wanted to rush out. It kept crashing against the prison, and every impact would make Wang Lin's face a bit paler. His eyes became cold, and his celestial spiritual energy activated to strengthen the prison. He slowly pulled it toward him as he stared at the red needle, and his eyes were filled with determination. Seal! With a shout, the prison rapidly shrank until it was wrapped around the needle. Wang Lin grabbed the needle and landed on the ground. If it wasn't for the red needle losing almost all of its power, it would have been impossible for Wang Lin to seal it. However, right now the needle was at its weakest, and Wang Lin had used all the celestial spiritual energy inside his body to seal it. Even so, the seal was still unstable. The red needle seemed like it could charge out at any time. Wang Lin took a deep breath, and his expression became extremely gloomy. The blood ancestor is not dead even though he didn't die. He must be extremely weak. Otherwise, this needle wouldn't have weakened so much. Once the blood ancestor recovers, the first thing he will do is try to kill me. Wang Lin's eyes became cold as he stared at the red needle. This needle was almost transparent and was giving off an aura of death. This needle must have been called by the blood ancestor to return. I can miss this chance. I must risk it. Wang Lin clenched his teeth and threw the red needle. The needle flew away with Wang Lin, following close behind while he adjusted the celestial spiritual energy inside his body. His seal was on the red needle, which made it very easy for him to attack. One person and one needle quickly moved across the thunder celestial realm. Often they would disappear without a trace in a flash. Countless small drops of blood floated in the void in the thunder celestial realm. There were flashes of blue light coming from these drops of blood, making them look very gorgeous. Every drop of blood contained a trace of the blood ancestor's origin soul and a large amount of origin energy. When the storage space collapsed, he used 3 blood soul pills and a secret spell of the Yao family to survive. When he came to the Alheaven star system, the blood ancestor was too confident and didn't take a blood soul pill in advance. If he had done so, he would have appeared on the blood planet in the Alliance star system. These drops of blood weren't completely stationary in the void but closely converged. Once all of them fused, he would awaken. This process slowly continued. 3 months later, the originally spread out drops of blood had gathered closely together. Some of them had even merged together. The blood ancestor's origin soul was gradually awakening. Once he awakens, his recovery rate will increase several-fold. This day, almost 60% of the blood drops had fused together. The blood ancestor's origin soul began to show signs of awakening. However, just at this moment, a ray of thunder came from the distance. This ray of thunder was a thunder beast with a chain around its neck. It had a bunch of paper talismans all over its body, so it looked like a mess. Someone had even managed to poke a small hole through its silver horn and put an iron hoop through it. The beast's eyes revealed a pitiful gaze. It was difficult to imagine how it managed to get through all this. Your appearance finally matches this old man's prestige. This is how a real thunder beast looks like. You should know that those golden-horned thunder beasts can only sigh when they look at you. You are the most unique thunder beast out there. Believe this, old man. Yes, you are fated with this old man. On the thunder beast's back sat an old man. He was holding the chain fastened around the thunder beast's neck like it was a horse. Behind him, there were countless rays of thunder following him like meteors. Inside every ray of thunder was a thunder beast, and their eyes all revealed fear. This old man would sometimes raise his hand to mess with the iron hoop on the Thunder Beast's silver horn, and then would reveal a look of admiration. This old man has so much fate with you that I almost want to return you to the little fellow. The Thunder Beast's body trembled. Right now, it was completely terrified of this old man. In particular, the word fated was like a nightmare. It could never forget how the old man kept muttering about them being fated while placing strange things on his body. However, although it wasn't satisfied with many of these things, it felt that the iron hoop was very pleasing to look at. Yes, this is the place. Yea, even a powerful Nirvana cleanser cultivator can end up like this, its fate. The old man looked at the gathered drops of blood, and his eyes lit up. The year of the dragon is approaching. Leo's year is coming fast, fervently shouting for the like button for the VIDEO, wishing to be drowned in happiness by the likes for the VIDEO. Chapter 763. Chance 2. This spell that merges the origin soul with blood belongs to old Yao's family. This is a spell only direct descents can use, and today one was caught by me. The old man rubbed his chin, and his eyes grew brighter and swept over the drops of blood. He is indeed worthy of someone fated with his old man to come up with such an unexpected method to deal with a Nirvana cleanser cultivator. I can just stand by and watch. I should help him. The old man licked his lips and his hand reached out. All of the drops of blood were seized by him without any resistance. With a pinch, all the drops of blood instantly fused. The blood ancestor's origin soul instantly fused and awakened. Many thanks, Senior. My Yao family will thank you. The blood ancestor's voice came from inside the blood. There was no joy or anger inside his voice. He was extremely calm. The old man messed with the iron hoop on the Thunder Beast's silver horn as he said, "Don't pretend. You obviously filled with fear in your heart. You worried that this old man has ill intentions and will directly refine you into a pill to even bring out the Yao family. Even if the Yao family's master, the blood god, comes, do you think this old man will be afraid?" The blood ancestor pondered a bit and then sent out a message. "No matter what, I have to thank Senior for his help." The old man said, "This old man is very reasonable. You see, I helped you reduce the time of your fusion. I didn't know that your Yao family's origin soul blood spell didn't allow your body to be fused back together by force. It seems that when I fuse your body by force, your cultivation level drops several realms, so you now at the late stage of Nirvana Scryer. Because I didn't know any of this before, you can blame me." The blood ancestor silently pondered and forcibly suppressed the wrath in his origin soul. His divine sense sent out a calm message. "No harm done. Since Senior didn't know, then this is my fate. If Senior has nothing else, please release your spell and let me leave." The old man chuckled as his eyes lit up and he said, "Little boy from the Yao family, you are fated with me." The Thunder Beast under him trembled and looked at the blood ancestor with a trace of sympathy. However, even more so, it was happy someone else was suffering with it. The blood ancestor silently pondered. "Didn't you say that you were going to repay me? Then you can repay me now." The old man raised his right hand and pulled out the blood ancestor's origin soul from the pool of blood. He then abruptly ripped half of the origin soul, and then with a wave of his right hand pulled half of the pool of blood as well. Half an origin soul and half a blood body is enough to repay this old man's grace. The old man smiled as he pushed the remaining half of the origin soul back into the remaining pool of blood and blew a breath. The pool began to boil and immediately collapsed, turning into countless drops of blood. The blood ancestor wasn't even able to send out a single divine sense before he went back to sleep. Although this old man's big matter will definitely succeed, with half of this Yao family member's origin soul and blood body, it will increase my chances. Now, isn't that always a good thing? The old man let out a mischievous smile. He didn't even look at the drops of blood and flew far away with the thunder beasts. In the void, Wang Lin's expression was gloomy as he closely followed behind the red needle. The red needle suddenly flashed brightly and emitted a powerful aura. It then broke through Wang Lin's seal. This change caused Wang Lin's eyes to narrow. However, the red needle suddenly dimmed again and became even weaker than before. It then headed straight toward the void ahead. Wang Lin frowned. He hesitated before following closely after. I must take this opportunity to kill the blood ancestor to prevent any problems in the future. Wang Lin clenched his teeth and chased after the red needle. Time slowly passed. Inside the void, Wang Lin had forgotten about the passage of time and had forgotten the burning pain, which was no longer as intense and was becoming weaker. He had forgotten all of this. The only thing that remained was the nearly collapsed red needle before him. The red needle gradually became faster and faster. Wang Lin was almost unable to keep up. However, at this moment, Wang Lin suddenly stopped. His eyes became cold and he looked ahead. There were 10 balls of blood of different sizes that were near each other, as if they were going to fuse. The red needle rushed into one of the balls of blood. A blood aura suddenly filled the area as the ball of blood that the red needle entered began to move and devour the other balls of blood. Blood ancestor? Wang Lin's eyes were filled with killing intent. He took out the mountain stone without any hesitation before extracting its soul and pressing it down toward the blood. The mountain soul surged forth and collapsed before the balls of blood, carrying a powerful force that caused the balls of blood to tremble. However, the mountain soul wasn't strong enough, and the balls of blood quickly gathered. After throwing forth the mountain soul, Wang Lin took a step back, took out the celestial sword and quickly swung it down. The heavenly chop shot out like lightning, and 2 balls of blood that were originally fusing were instantly separated by the heavenly chop. Wang Lin didn't stop. The powerful thunder inside his origin soul surged out, forming powerful bolts of thunder that shot toward the balls of blood. Under the powerful attacks, the balls of blood trembled violently. The blood ancestor's origin soul inside the balls of blood struggled to awaken. Wang Lin's hands formed a seal, and the power of thunder surged out of his origin soul like crazy. Right now he used the thunder inside his body without reserve on those balls of blood. At the same time, he raised the celestial sword and swung again. A ball of blood exploded with a bang. A miserable groan seemed to come from the void, and the rest of the balls of blood began to gather like crazy. The blood ancestor's origin soul was about to awaken. Wang Lin's eyes were filled with blood. He had a feeling that if those balls of blood gathered, he would never get a chance to kill the blood ancestor again. His right hand pointed at the blood and he shouted, "Stop!" The stop spell instantly appeared, but the blood ancestor's origin soul inside the blood was too powerful. Wang Lin wasn't able to stop the blood ancestor due to low cultivation level. The celestial spiritual energy inside his body surged like crazy, causing sharp pain from his meridians. His origin soul was also still injured, because he had no time to recover on the way here. Now, under this stress, he coughed out blood and shouted ferociously, "Stop for me!" The balls of blood that were gathering only paused for a moment under Wang Lin's spell. At this instant, the karma whip appeared and mercilessly whipped the balls of blood. At the same time, the last strand of Ling Qianhu's sword energy inside Wang Lin's body rushed out toward the balls of blood. The karma whip, Ling Qianhu's sword energy, and the countless thunderbolta from Wang Lin's origin soul seemed to fuse into one. They rushed into the condensing balls of blood right before the blood ancestor's origin soul awakened. Collapse! At this moment, the balls of blood that were condensing collapsed into countless drops of blood, and the blood ancestor let out an unwilling roar. The blood split into 2 parts. One carried the blood ancestor's origin soul and escaped. The second part turned around and rushed toward Wang Lin. The drops of blood rushing toward Wang Lin suddenly surrounded him and entered his body through his pores. An intense pain filled with body, causing Wang Lin to cough out a mouthful of blood. The powerful impact caused him to be thrown into the void and disappear. The celestial sword was controlled by Shu Liguo. He took the mountain soul and chased after Wang Lin. Although Shu Liguo has rebellious, at this moment he panicked. Instead of flying away to freedom, he followed Wang Lin straight into the void. Wang Lin entered a coma. The drops of blood that rushed into his body were filled with powerful origin energy. This origin energy was cultivated by the blood ancestor over countless years and was extremely precious. However, this origin energy was like a sword of death inside Wang Lin's body. But there was such a thing as luck in the world. When the old man asked Wang Lin for the Thunder Beast, he had inadvertently blew far too much energy into him. This energy would explode the moment the burning disappeared from Wang Lin's body. It was unknown whether Wang Lin could survive this, but he would most likely be unable to bear it, and in his origin soul would collapse with his body. However, the blood ancestor was badly wounded right now. In order to escape and more so to kill Wang Lin, he had used half of his blood body to rush into Wang Lin. His intention was to kill, But he had inadvertently given Wang Lin an opportunity so great that it was just second to seeing the direction of the third step. Wang Lin's body crashed into a fragment that wasn't connected by any thunder chains and was just floating in the void. Not all the fragments in the thunder celestial realm were interconnected. There were tiny fragments that floated in the void. Wang Lin's body was buried deep into the earth before he stopped. He was completely unconscious, but his body was rapidly changing. His body was filled with a large amount of origin energy that came from the drops of blood. Even his origin soul underwent a shocking change. After being surrounded by such rich origin energy, it began to absorb the origin energy. His cultivation was rapidly progressing toward the illusory yin stage. There shouldn't have been clouds over this small fragment, but at this moment, clouds began to appear. These clouds were exactly the same as the ones that appeared in the demon spirit land when Wang Lin decided to defy the heavens. As for the blood ancestor, his origin soul had awakened because the blood balls had merged. However, his body hadn't taken form yet, so he was dark red. He had never felt so weak ever since he started cultivating. This kind of weakness made him feel a deep chill. His hatred for Wang Lin had reached a peak. He had never hated someone so much. Wang Lin was the first. 6,000 words in a major chapter, wishing for sharing, for likes on the video. Chapter 764. Chance. 3. The collapse of the storage space made it so that he had to use the origin blood fusion spell. Then he considered himself unlucky to have met that old man that took half of his origin soul, along with half the origin energy that he had spent countless years cultivating. This caused his cultivation level to reduce greatly, but that would have been fine if not for the old man's last attack that caused him to revert back to the state of slumber where he had to wait for the drops of blood to gather once more. In addition, the old man's attack contained a powerful force that acted like a prison. Just when his fusion reached the critical moment and he was about to awaken again, Wang Lin appeared. The blood ancestor had been met with countless setbacks, so in the end he could only escape. At this moment he was extremely weak and his origin soul was filled with a monstrous sense of anger. Wang Lin, you and I can coexist. The blood ancestor let out a mad roar and charged into the void. He had lost all his reasoning. If anyone else had been through all this, they would also lose their reason. In particular, the restriction left by the mysterious old man also made him go crazy. He immediately turned and chased after where Wang Lin disappeared. I'd rather not heal my injuries and kill you instead. The fragment Wang Lin was on slowly floated through the void. Wang Lin's eyes were shut, and the celestial swords circled around him. Shu Liguo floated beside him with a bitter face and muttered, I should have left, but I can leave this fiend here. Alas, I, Shu Liguo, am a loyal person, and definitely can do something like abandoning my master. I didn't run this time. So the fiend will value me more and give me more benefits in the future. He, your Grand Shu is clever. Shu Liguo's eyes turned and he made a decision. Besides, this fiend is only an avatar, his original body, thinking about Wang Lin's original body. He shivered. If there was only one person that he feared from his heart, it was Wang Lin's original body. In the Alliance star system, there was an abandoned planet giving off thunder. Deep inside the planet, there was a naturally formed cave filled with thunder, and there was a person sitting cross-legged inside. His red hair was like blood, and his body gave off a chilling aura. There were 4 stars slowly rotating between his eyebrows. As he cultivated, strands of spiritual energy came from all directions and entered his body. He suddenly opened his eyes. Inside his calm gaze lied a trace of terrifying killing intent. Blood ancestor, you forced my avatar into a coma. How can I let this matter go? He was Wang Lin's original body. The original body clenched his fists and slowly stood up. After silently pondering for a long time, he rushed out. There was a series of rumbles as the layers of earth above him shattered. A loud bang echoed as the original body charged out from underground on the east side of the planet. A large amount of dust scattered everywhere. After he charged out, he didn't stop. He rushed into space. Once he entered space, he spread out his arms and crisp, crackling sounds constantly came from his body. These sounds became more and more frequent and intense. The veins on his body bulged, and a muffled, thunderous roar kept coming out from inside his body. His body gradually changed. His legs thickened and slowly extended, and even his arms did the same. His entire body slowly grew as if he was being inflated like a balloon. At this moment, His body enlarged like crazy. During this process, an even more heavy sound came from his body like a roar from ancient times. There were no pain on his face. There was only calmness and the anger in his eyes. His body grew larger and larger. Half an incense stick of time later, a giant more than 1,000 feet tall appeared. His body gave off a savage aura, and his skin was filled with coarse and subtle runes. The glow of the runes gave him an unimaginable sense of majesty. A low roar came out from his mouth. This roar seemed to come from ancient times and was filled with an aura that looked down upon the world. Everything within the range of the roar seemed to regain their memories of ancient times and all retreated. Even the fierce beasts on nearby planets all immediately lied on the ground and began trembling after hearing this roar. This was a trembling that came from their soul. The ancient god was the god of space. During the age when the ancient gods roamed, all living being had to respect them. At this moment, countless years after the ancient gods disappeared, this roar seemed to declare that the ancient gods had reappeared. Only at this moment did Wang Lin have the majesty of an ancient god. He was an ancient god. From 4 stars and ONWRD, an ancient god's body would groan like crazy. Before, Wang Lin had suppressed this, but at this moment he stopped suppressing it and let his ancient god body appear for the first time. Only by showing his ancient god body could he be called a real ancient god and have the power of an ancient god. Blood ancestor, you caused my avatar to go into a coma, so I'll destroy your blood planet. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness. When he took a step, it was as if the entire star system trembled. He walked through space as if he was on the ground and rushed off into the distance. As he walked, he raised his giant right hand and pointed to the spot between his eyebrows. A large amount of spiritual energy gathered in high fingertip to form an imprint filled with an ancient aura. This imprint landed between his eyebrows and made the 4 stars disappear. This imprint was not something cultivators could use. It was something only ancient gods could use, and it hid the identity of the ancient gods. Unless a very powerful cultivators appeared, it would be impossible for others to see through his identity. Since the Alliance star system has the giant demon clan, no one will think that my 1,000-foot-tall body is an ancient god. His eyes became cold. Compared to an adult ancient god, his body was insignificant and weak, so no one would think was an ancient god if they saw him. He had no expression as he charged through the blood planet. In the past, he saw the star map that the All-Seer gave him, so he naturally knew where the blood planet was. As he moved through space, his eyes narrowed. He saw several broken stones of varying sizes floating through space. These stones were common in space. As he stepped forward, he didn't stop and grabbed toward a 100-foot wide stone. As he let out a roar, the stone was attracted by a force created by spiritual energy, and he continued moving forward. After he left, 2 cultivators came out from a slightly smaller piece of stone. The 2 of them were trembling with fear as they stared dumbfoundedly at Wang Lin's original body disappearing into the distance. What is this? The 2 of them looked at each other. Their scalps tingled as they quickly escaped this place. Along the way, whenever Wang Lin encountered these stones, he would select those that were 100 feet large. He would grab them and use spiritual energy to drag them along. These were his weapons. In his memories, early-stage ancient gods didn't have many spells and liked using these as weapons. It seemed like these things were easy to use, and the more he had, the better. Wang Lin headed toward the blood planet with a trail of stones that looked like a river following him. He carried with him a grim killing intent as he came closer and closer. Kill! Nearly 3,800 words, already quite long. Day by day people say it's short, look at others. All are 2,000 words a chapter. Leo is that long, wouldn't you cast a like for Leo's video? Chapter 765. Blood Planet. The blood planet was a planet filled with a blood-colored light. It was not located within planet Tianyun's sphere of influence and was a bit far from it. In truth, none of the powerful cultivators who had the power to use entire cultivation planet as their cave would choose to be too close to each other. Even those who were very good friends were the same. After all, they couldn't drop their guard against others. These old monsters that had cultivated for many years were especially aware of this. Similarly, a cultivator who was powerful enough to use an entire planet as their cave would naturally not need the protection of planet Xianyun. Thus, it was natural for them to choose a remote place for their cave. The most important part of choosing the location of their cave was for it to be outside the range of everyone else's divine sense range. otherwise your every move would perceived. The blood ancestor was a cultivator with secrets, so he was even more cautious when choosing his cave. On the map the All-Seer gave Wang Lin, the blood planet was extremely remote without any planet that housed powerful cultivators nearby. This was one of the reasons why Wang Lin's original body was attacking it. Wang Lin's original body headed toward the blood planet with a cold expression and a river of stones behind him. Space was simply too large. Wang Lin's original body seemed so insignificant in comparison. Along the way he didn't T-pause at all. He charged non-stop toward the blood planet with cold killing intent in a river of stones. Several months flashed by. When he encountered other cultivators, all of them were startled and didn't T-act rashly. They didn't know anything about ancient gods. Even among the 4-star systems, only a few people even knew they existed, and even then, it was only from reading ancient records. What's more, those ancient gods recorded were often adult ancient gods with 6 stars or more. Their bodies were even larger than cultivation planets, a unique trait of the ancient gods. A 4-star ancient god aura was not obvious. Among cultivators, unless they had personally seen the ancient gods, it would be impossible to associate him with the ancient gods that have been extinct for countless years. This was one of the reasons why Wang Lin decided to reveal his original body as true form. These various reasons were merely side objectives. The real reason came from Wang Lin's revolting personality. The avatar was seriously injured and forced into a coma. Even the unbreakable connection between the original body and the avatar was very weak at this moment, and it felt as if it could break at any moment. Once the connection was gone, it meant the avatar was dead. Powerful killing intent filled his heart. The avatar had been painstakingly cultivated for many years. In truth, there was no primary or secondary body to him. The original body was him and the avatar was him as well. If the avatar died, then that meant he was killed once. If his original body chose to hide and wait until his cultivation level was higher to reappear, then he would no longer be Wang Lin. There were times that he had to do things even when the consequences were unfavorable. The chance of being discovered as an ancient god is extremely low, but even if I was found out, so what? His eyes became colder, and he moved even faster. Although Wang Lin couldn't use a lot of the spells he had inherited from the memories of the ancient god, there were many life-saving spells that he could now use since he was almost a 4-star ancient god. The most effective spell among them was the spell the ancient gods used to protect their young spirit transformation. To enter a planet not to absorb spiritual energy but to surround oneself in spiritual energy and enter a dormant state. Unless one encounters another ancient god, no one else is able to detect it. This was the spell of an ancient god. It was many levels higher than the spells cultivators used. The only thing I need to worry about is Tasan. However, with his 8-star ancient god body, he will be recognized by those powerful cultivators as soon as he appears. Even if he causes havoc in the Alliance star system, what does it have to do with me? I am not a saint. His eyes became even colder. There were many blood slaves on the blood planet. These people were controlled by the blood ancestor and had the blood ancestor's branding on their souls. If the blood ancestor lives, they live, and if the blood ancestor dies, they die. Most of these were people that he had forcibly kidnapped from nearby planets. He took away their freedom and forced them to work for him. He also collected gifted youths that he fed blood pills to and groomed them to be blood guardians that protected the blood planet. The blood ancestor was a very cold person. Only toward his daughter would he show a rare sign of kindness. It could be said that aside from the blood ancestor and his daughter, all other living things were their slaves. Their lives and deaths were controlled by but a thought. Xianxia was sitting upon an altar outside the blood pavilion with anxiety on her face. She should occasionally look back at the blood pavilion. That place was a forbidden area. Not even she was allowed to enter. At this moment, several rays of bloodlight came from the distance and rapidly closed in. 4 elders appeared before Xianxia. The 4 of them all gave off origin energy. Clearly they were all powerful cultivators who had reached the second step. One of the old men lowered his head and said, "Mistress, another group of blood slaves died." Xianxia bit her lower lip and silently pondered. Over the past few months, large amounts of blood slaves and blood guardians had inexplicably exploded and died. As of today, more than 70% had died. This matter filled Xianxia with distress. The only explanation was that something had happened to the blood ancestor. One of the old men raised his head as he stared at Zixin and slowly asked, "Mistress, where exactly did Lord Blood Ancestor go?" Zixin's eyes became cold as she coldly said, "Impudent. Is this something you can ask?" This made Zixin even more anxious. Before, none of them would dare to say something like this, but at this moment, even Zixin wondered if the blood ancestor was dying. The old man sneered as he turned around and walked away. His mood was very bad, but there was also a trace of relief. His body also contained the blood ancestor's imprint, but right now it wasn't too important. Ever since I was forcibly branded by the blood ancestor 6,000 years ago, I can even take half a step out of the blood planet without the blood ancestor's order. Now the blood ancestor has obviously encountered misfortune. This old man, if I am going to die, I'd rather die in my hometown than here. The old man's eyes were filled with sorrow when he headed straight for space. The three elders all looked up at the sky and watched their companion disappear into the sky. After silently pondering, the three of them looked at each other. They no longer spoke and flew into the sky. Zixin's eyes became cold as she stood up and shouted, "You guys have guts. Are you all not afraid the blood ancestor will return?" However, before she finished speaking, one of the old men lowered his head. He looked at her coldly and said, "Noisy, you are only one of the blood ancestor's playthings. Do you really think you are the mistress? I and the other cultivators give you respect because of the blood ancestor. Without him, what are you worth? I have been on the blood planet for almost 10,000 years and have seen at least a dozen girls like you." After leaving behind this line, this person disappeared into the sky. Zixin's body trembled, and she began to ponder. When the four redrobed old men flew into the sky, the remaining blood slaves that hadn't died all looked up and struggled. No one knew who was the first, but after that, almost all of the blood slaves flew away. Zixin looked at all of this and revealed a decisive gaze. She appeared before the blood pavilion and remembered the seals that the blood ancestor had used to open it. She hesitated for a moment before clenching her teeth. Just at this moment, the entire sky suddenly darkened, and a powerful pressure instantly covered the entire blood planet. Zixin was startled and looked up, but what she saw made her face pale. What is this? In space, the first four redrobed elders all looked at each other. They didn't need to speak and knew of the other's decision. They clasped their hands at each other and were about to separate when they suddenly looked into the distance. A river made of stones was whistling through space toward the blood planet. There was a giant more than 1,000 feet tall standing above the long river. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. The four redrobed old men's eyes narrowed and they quickly looked at each other. They immediately flew away in 4 different directions, completely ignoring that giant that was coming over. "Blood ancestor, even you can have a day like this." The same words appeared at almost the same time within the 4 old men's minds. Behind the 4 old men was a large amount of blood slaves. When they entered space, they were startled by the giant, but they all quickly left. None of them stayed to defend the blood planet, and they all revealed sneers. Some didn't even escape too far but stayed near the blood planet. They wanted to personally watch the demise of the blood planet. With Wang Lin's wisdom, he was immediately able to realize what was happening with those blood slaves. He didn't stop them but quickly charged toward the blood planet with a large amount of stones. When he was very close to the blood planet, he rose above the stone river. Each of his hands grabbed a 100 feet large stone, and he threw them toward the blood planet. A loud rumble echoed as the 2 stones smashed toward the blood planet like 2 meteors. The moment the stones got near the planet, a blood light screen appeared and caused the 2 stones to shatter. Wang Lin's eyes became even more cold. He waved his hand and without pause threw one stone after another toward the blood planet. In the end, Wang Lin stretched open his arms and used his spiritual energy to pull the entire stone river toward the blood planet. Countless stones smashed down. Although the blood light screen was strong, without the control of the blood ancestor, it was limited. Facing Wang Lin's youth ancient god power, the blood light screen collapsed after half an incense stick of time. Large amounts of stones fell on the blood planet. Every time one landed, the entire planet would tremble, and a circular shockwave visible to the eye would immediately appear and spread in all directions. Zixin's face was pale. The shaking of the ground and the destructive power caused her mind to tremble. She saw those large stones descend from the sky, and each one would cause the earth to tremble violently. She couldn't imagine what kind of power and spell could do something like this. Too terrifying. Zixin clenched her teeth and fear surged through her body like a tidal wave. She looked at the blood pavilion before her as her hand formed seals imitating the blood ancestor. Throughout the years she had been on the blood planet, she secretly paid attention to the hand signs used every time the blood ancestor opened the pavilion and firmly remembered them in her heart. She would often secretly practice, but she didn't dare to set the blood pavilion as her goal. Now that the blood ancestor was dying, the blood planet was in a mess, and a foreign force was invading, she no longer had to worry. Her hands moved faster and faster until a red flash came from the blood pavilion. A vague, red passage appeared and Zixin's eyes were filled with excitement. Just at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened once more, and a giant shadow was cast over her. Zixin was startled and subconsciously looked up. This caused her to become completely stunned. In the sky, a 1,000-foot-tall giant was coming toward her through the void. Its icy gaze landed directly on Zixin. Zixin's body trembled. She could see that behind the giant were large stones crashing toward the earth. A deep sense of fear emerged inside her heart. She immediately lowered her head to look at the blood pavilion and charged toward the passage without any hesitation. However, just as she stepped in, a sharp and miserable scream came from her mouth. The red light from the tunnel landed on her and her body decayed at a visible rate. Green smoke came from her body, and even her origin soul collapsed. In Wang Lin's gaze, the woman's body turned into green smoke and was absorbed into the blood-colored passage. Wang Lin coldly looked at the blood pavilion. He reached out and grabbed the blood pavilion along with the 100 feet of earth around it. At this moment, the stones from the sky continued to descend, and the entire blood planet was a wreck. Wang Lin held the blood pavilion in one hand, and his other hand formed a fist and pummeled the earth. Among the loud rumbles, the blood planet became even more unstable. Layers of ripples spread and dust flew everywhere. A moment later, Wang Lin flew away from the blood planet and disappeared far into the distance. None of the blood slaves and blood guardians tried to stop any of this. In fact, most of them clasped their hands at where Wang Lin disappeared to. Shortly after Wang Lin left, their eyes were filled with confusion. It was as if invisible shackles had been released, and all of them dispersed to return to their homes that they had not seen in a long time. The last day of June, wishing for the like button for the VIDEO. A sweep of the like button for the VIDEO each month. The June ticket expires tonight at 12. Chapter 766. Treasure refined by the heavens. The destruction of the blood planet didn't set off a large wave in the Alliance star system. Due to the fact that the blood planet was so remote, no one became aware of this matter until a long time had passed. Wang Lin's original body had left with the blood pavilion. As he flew through space, his body slowly shrank until he was the size of a normal cultivator once more. As for the blood pavilion, he sealed it and swallowed it. When it was inside him, it was surrounded by his spiritual energy. This blood pavilion was very strange, so Wang Lin decided to carefully study it. After finding a rank cultivation planet, Wang Lin snuck in. He found a place deep within the planet and hid himself. The connection in his soul with his avatar became more stable. It is worth mentioning that although this trip had attracted the attention of some powerful cultivators, it was not linked to the ancient gods. After all, the ancient gods had disappeared far too long ago. In the Al-Heaven star system, there was a fragment slowly drifting through the void of the Thunder celestial realm. At this moment, large amount of clouds that shouldn't appear were quickly condensing toward this fragment, and within them were hidden rumbles. Shortly after, a bolt of thunder came out from the clouds and landed on the fragment. The thunder quickly dispersed through the fragment, quickly found Wang Lin in a coma, and entered his body. Wang Lin's body suddenly trembled. Shortly after, countless thunderbolts gathered and descended on the ground. This caused the fragment to tremble again, and a large amount of rocks fell off the edge of the cliff. The blood ancestor was staring at the fragment from a distance. He could clearly feel half his blood body on that fragment, and the origin energy within was being rapidly absorbed. This feeling made him want to go mad. This was the first time he wanted to kill someone but had inadvertently helped that person grow. However, he was afraid to move. He carefully looked at the clouds above the fragment. He could feel that the power inside them was slowly brewing and growing stronger. This is divine retribution. I didn't think that this person's cultivation could actually cause divine retribution. I presume that the heavens might that went into the demon spirit land back then was caused by him as well. The blood ancestor's eyes became cold. The stronger the divine retribution is, the better. If I charged in, I would just end up helping him instead. I'll simply wait here and watch him get killed by the divine retribution. That will be very satisfying as well. The blood ancestor sneered as he stared at the fragment, and hatred filled his eyes. The fragment stopped floating due to the restriction placed on it from the large amount of clouds gathering. A large amount of clouds gathered here, and another bolt of thunder landed on the fragment. The fragment trembled once more, and the edges shattered even more. This process lasted for a month, and more thunder descended. When the blood ancestor looked over, he couldn't even see the edge of the clouds anymore. He retreated because he didn't want to provoke the might of the divine retribution. There was delight along with hatred in his heart as he muttered, "The more the better. More clouds should gather and kill that Wang Lin. Only then can this old man's hatred be dispelled." More and more clouds gathered. Several days later, not only were the clouds above the fragment, the clouds were even around the fragment. The fragment was no longer visible, and all one could see were clouds. At this moment, it was as if the preparation for the divine retribution was complete, and divine retribution arrived. Countless thunderbolts appeared from the clouds and landed on the fragment. This thunder didn't only come from above but from all the clouds that had surrounded the fragment. Loud, thunderous roars echoed across the void. The fragment continued to collapse under the thunder from the clouds. The thunder moved through the fragment and rushed to Wang Lin, who was in a coma. Wang Lin's body would tremble every time a bolt of thunder entered his body, and countless bolts of thunder had surged into his body. Shu Liguo was terrified and could only hide inside the celestial sword. Even one bolt of this thunder was fatal to him. At this moment, inside Wang Lin's body, the power of the old man and the blood ancestor were negating each other. Normally, this process would take a long time, but the constant bolts of thunder entering his body were rapidly speeding up this process. The origin energy inside his body increased like crazy. Not only did the thunder from the divine retribution not damage his body, the benefits were unimaginable. However, he was unconscious. If he was awake, the benefits would be even greater with his guidance. Large amounts of thunder fell endlessly on the fragment. It was as if the fragment was inside a furnace made by the heavens and being refined by heavenly thunder. This kind of refining was extremely rare in the current cultivation world, because not many materials could survive such a powerful bombardment from heavenly thunder. If there was, then it had to be the fragments of the Thunder Celestial Realm. This land was originally part of the Thunder Celestial Realm, and it had spent countless years surrounded by celestial thunder. Although it had collapsed, it was still part of the Thunder Celestial Realm. Although the edges of the fragment were breaking off under the endless bombardment of heavenly thunder, the center became even more sturdy due to the thunder moving through it. It could be said that as it was refined by the heavenly thunder, it became more and more like a magical treasure. This power contained within the fragment was unimaginable because its material wasn't something ordinary, it was a fragment of the celestial realm. If that was just the case, it wouldn't be too special, but it wasn't something that was refined by cultivators. It was refined by the heavens. The blood ancestor gradually realized this, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes were filled with greed. There weren't many treasures that could tempt someone at his cultivation level. However, when he realized that this fragment was turning into a magical treasure by chance, his heart suddenly began to pound. Gains and losses are determined by fate. This old man have lost too much this time. If this fragment is refined by the heavens, its power will be completely different. It might be able to display the true power of the celestial realm. This treasure was prepared for me. The blood ancestor's eyes revealed excitement. Thunder continued to descend, but at this moment all of the thunder suddenly disappeared. A drastic change occurred inside the clouds, and a bolt of black thunder began to brew inside them. This bolt of black thunder was the real divine retribution. It quickly condensed and charged toward the fragment. At the same time, Wang Lin, who was in the depths of the fragment, opened his eyes. In dreams, Leo sees his video standing in third place on the popular charts. Hoping to garner more fan support, and looking for help from you all to climb even higher in the rankings this month, Chapter 767. Illusory Yin. The black thunder carried with it the might of the heavens and landed on the fragment. There was a loud explosion that echoed across the fragment, and a huge crack appeared. In the depths of the crack was Wang Lin, who had just opened his eyes. The thunder directly descended and smashed into Wang Lin at a crazy speed. Bang! Wang Lin's body trembled violently. The thunder rushed into his body and swept through his body like a storm. However, it was quickly affected by the blood and power from the mysterious old man. The three powers used Wang Lin's body as a battleground. The battle caused a loud roar, and in the end it turned into a large amount of origin energy that surrounded him. His origin soul rapidly devoured the origin energy and quickly grew. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a mysterious light. He had awakened. Especially when he was hit by this bolt of thunder, he had awakened completely. Divine retribution. Wang Lin sucked in a breath of cold air. He still remembered the divine retribution from back in the demon spirit land. Now that he was facing it again, his eyes shined brightly. The moment he awakened, he noticed the chaos inside his body. Without the divine retribution, his body would have exploded first. This divine retribution came at the right time. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. This was the first time he was glad at the arrival of the divine retribution. His right hand pressed against the ground and he sprang into the air without any hesitation. The celestial sword beside him immediately screamed, "Master, Master, take me with you. I want to go back inside the bag of holding. This place is terrifying." As Wang Lin flew up, he waved his right hand. The celestial sword flew toward him and was put away inside his bag. The celestial mountain was put away as well. At the moment he charged out from the fragment, all of the clouds around the fragment began to boil. Under this violent movement, a divine retribution more intense than the one from the demon spirit land appeared. Under this heaven's might, Wang Lin felt like there was a giant hand pressing down upon him from the sky. Popping sounds came from inside his body. At the same time, 4 bolts of black thunder gathered from the above, below, right, and left of the fragment and quickly descended. Wang Lin's eyes shined brightly. He opened his arms and didn't even try to dodge. The thunder from above descended and landed on his body. Shortly after, the thunder from the left and right sides quickly closed in. Finally, the thunder from under the fragment came. It had penetrated through the fragment and also landed on Wang Lin. The 4 rays of black thunder surged like crazy through Wang Lin's body. They collided with the blood body and the power from the mysterious old man once more. The collision this time was unprecedentedly intense, as if a real storm had broken inside Wang Lin's body. The 3 powers released large amounts of origin energy. This origin energy was too powerful. Under the impact, Wang Lin couldn't help but let out a loud roar. His aura increased like crazy. As his origin soul devoured the origin energy, it completed an important process of transitioning from the peak of the late stage of ascendant to the illusory yin stage. What is an origin soul? If one's cultivation hasn't reached the illusory yin stage and goes through this important process, the so-called origin soul is in fact fake. A real origin soul can devour origin energy and gain new life from origin energy. The ancient cultivators cultivated QI. This QI was origin energy. Once this origin energy has been cultivated long enough, it will form the origin soul. The cultivators now had this step backwards. Only by reaching the second step could the cultivators nowadays catch up to the ancient cultivators. At this moment, powerful origin energy surged into his origin soul, causing Wang Lin's origin soul to change like crazy. His origin soul was taking the crucial step toward the next step, peak of the late stage of ascendant, broken through. At the moment of breakthrough, Wang Lin seemed to feel his own Tao. It was as if everything in the world had become crystal clear. A laughter came from his mouth. This laughter pierced through the clouds and continued to spread to the outside world. The blood ancestor was watching the clouds, hoping Wang Lin would be killed by the divine retribution. However, after hearing this laughter, his expression changed. Illusory yin, the blood ancestor's expression became gloomy and he muttered, "It seems that half my blood body contained enough origin energy for him to temporarily resist the divine retribution and reach the illusory yin stage, but just this is still." As he spoke, his expression changed once more, and he stared at the churning clouds before him. It's still climbing. Wang Lin had never felt as comfortable as now. All of the celestial spiritual energy inside his body was rapidly disappearing, and was being replaced by the origin energy surging out from his origin soul. The clouds around him seemed to become angry and the might of heaven inside transformed into thunder. Inside the clouds, 8 bolts of black thunder formed and fell on Wang Lin's body. Wang Lin laughed like crazy as his origin soul charged out from his body. His origin soul was no longer human-shaped. It had taken the shape of the ancient thunder dragon. As the 8 bolts of black thunder descended, his ancient thunder dragon origin soul devoured them. He devoured 8 bolts of black thunder consecutively and returned back into his body before releasing them. The blood body and the old man's power exploded once more, and in exchange, he obtained even more origin energy. Wang Lin's cultivation level rose like crazy once more under the impact of the origin energy that was released. His illusory yin cultivation had stabilized and began pushing toward the peak of the illusory yin stage. The illusory yin and corporeal yang stages were the transition between the first and second step of cultivation. This was meant to be a perfect balance of yin and yang. The illusory yin stage was the change in the origin soul, while the corporeal yang stage was all the celestial spiritual energy dissipating and being replaced by origin energy. This process was called origin transformation. It was to change a cultivator into an existence like ancient cultivators. After the ancient cultivators disappeared and the celestial realm collapsed, very few people have broken through 2 realms when entering the yin and yang stage. But all those that did had amazing achievements afterward and stood at the peak of the second step. Even the Alzir spent 300 years to pass through these 2 realms. Ling Tianho spent 800 years and the blood ancestor spent almost 1,000 years. This had nothing to do with talent. The biggest reason was origin energy. At this moment, Wang Lin was constantly advancing toward that direction. The divine retribution was like nutrients, and the blood body and power from the old man were the origin energy fueling this process. The blood ancestor stared at the clouds before him, and the killing intent inside his eyes became even stronger. I came to kill him, but instead I gave him great fortune. I won tea except this. Above the fragment inside the clouds, Wang Lin raised his head. His eyes were clear and contained a hint of expectation. Thunderous roars came from the cloud as a 7-colored bolt of thunder quickly condensed. From yesterday until now, Leo has only slept for 2 hours. Can't take it anymore. Today there's only the first watch. Leo wants to catch up on sleep. After the salon ends, the missing chapters will be compensated. Chapter 768, Corporeal Yang, Counterattack. Wang Lin had never hoped for the divine retribution to descend like today. He looked at the 7-colored thunder condensing inside the clouds. From all the divine retribution he had experienced, this was the first time he had seen a 7-colored thunderbolt. 7-colored clouds quickly gathered, and they contained powerful heaven's might. Under the pressure, crackling sounds came from the fragment under Wang Lin. The edges of the fragment collapsed once more. Its size was rapidly changing, but the more it shrank, the more terrifying its durability became. Wang Lin's eyes shined brightly, and large amounts of origin energy surged through his body. Not only did his heart pound rapidly, but the vibration from his origin soul made the origin energy inside his body cycle even faster. A powerful feeling appeared inside Wang Lin's heart. He never had such control of this feeling before. Wang Lin raised his right hand and formed a fist. He was finally experiencing the feeling of coldly looking down on the world after gaining control of the power of the world. He could clearly feel his own cultivation breaking through the limit of the first step of cultivation. He had broken through the peak of the late stage of ascendant and reached the illusory yin stage. Divine retribution, be a bit more aggressive. Wang Lin's expression was ferocious as he looked at the sky. At this moment, the 7-colored thunderbolt rapidly condensed and released a ray of 7-colored light. It released a strange sound and then suddenly descended. That sound was like a demonic sound that could affect one's heart. Countless familiar figures appeared around Wang Lin, but his eyes were still calm. The 7-colored thunderbolt descended with a thunderous roar. It was as if it wanted to destroy everything in its path as it descended toward Wang Lin like crazy from the sky. In an instant, the thunder landed on his body. An earth-shattering roar echoed across the fragment and replaced everything. When the power of thunder entered his body, Wang Lin was immediately knocked into the ground. His body was pressed deep into the ground. The blood body and power from the old man rapidly disintegrated as they fought with the power of divine retribution. Come again! Wang Lin's body rushed into the air. Thunder traveled through his whole body, and his hair moved without any wind. The current him was like a celestial demon. The might of the heavens can be resisted. At this moment all of the clouds around the fragment became enraged. The clouds churned and 7 colored thunderbolts fell like rain toward Wang Lin. Even the fragment was engulfed by this thunder shower. The thunderous roar was the only sound left. At this moment it was as if Wang Lin was in thunder hell, as 7 colored thunder was everywhere. The fragment shattered even more until there were only about 10,000 feet left. It was as if Wang Lin was inside the heavens furnace as bolts of thunder continued to fall on him. Many cracks appeared all over Wang Lin's body and quickly spread. At the same time, the blood body that entered his body had completely collapsed and was releasing untold amounts of origin energy inside Wang Lin's origin soul. That powerful feeling once again appeared inside Wang Lin's body. He could clearly feel his cultivation beginning to climb once more, from stabilized illusory yin to the peak of the illusory yin stage, and it was still climbing. It was becoming infinitely close to the corporeal yang stage. Still missing a bit. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. The blood ancestor's blood body had collapsed and no longer existed. However, there was still a lot of energy from the mysterious old man. Wang Lin had a feeling that if he didn't get rid of this, it would have great impact on his body. His eyes were filled with decisiveness. His cultivation path was filled with danger. Wealth can only be obtained if one takes risk. Right now there was only one path to take. Wang Lin charged into the air and shot toward the cloud in the sky like an arrow. This was Wang Lin's first time actively counterattacking. He wasn't passively suffering the divine retribution, but attacking it. He rushed directly into the cloud, opened his arms, and mercilessly inhaled. At this moment a roar came from the clouds that came infinitely close to the roar of a beast. In an instant, all of the clouds gathered and all of the thunder within landed on Wang Lin like crazy. Wang Lin laughed like crazy as his origin soul spread out and covered his body to absorb the thunder. The energy left by the old man quickly moved through his origin soul, and under the endless bombardment of thunder, it released a large amount of origin energy. This was a chance, the greatest opportunity Wang Lin had since he started cultivating, other than, of course, the chance to see the third step. His cultivation level climbed like crazy without end as he devoured the clouds. At this moment, Wang Lin forgot about the clouds and the energy from the old man. He opened his mouth and devoured large mouthfuls of clouds. As he continued to absorb them, the clouds gradually shrank and were no longer dense. They became thin enough that even the blood ancestor was able to clearly see Wang Lin. The blood ancestor sucked in a breath of cold air as he stared at Wang Lin. Seeing that Wang Lin was actually swallowing the clouds, he could hardly believe his eyes and muttered, "Madman, this Wang Lin is a madman. No one would dare to take the initiative to divine retribution. I can let him continue." The blood ancestor's eyes lit up and he immediately rushed forth. After being weakened so much, he was only at the peak of the corporeal yang stage, one step from the nirvana scryer stage. However, he was confident it was more than enough to kill Wang Lin. He turned into a blood shadow and headed straight toward Wang Lin within the clouds. At this moment, inside the clouds, Wang Lin suddenly felt a sense of crisis coming toward him. His eyes turned cold and immediately saw the blood shadow heading toward him through the clouds. "Blood ancestor," Wang Lin sneered as he retreated back into the clouds. The blood ancestor revealed a gloomy expression outside clouds and clenched his teeth before charging in. The moment he entered, he felt the power of the heavens' might. He didn't have an ancient thunder dragon origin soul like Wang Lin, and his cultivation was greatly weakened. When facing this divine retribution, he had a feeling of awe. However, no feeling right now could beat the urge of him wanting to kill Wang Lin. He let out a cold snort as he charged forward. A moment later, he saw Wang Lin get struck by countless bolts of thunder within the clouds. It was as if he had seen an illusion. The moment he saw Wang Lin, he felt like he didn't see a person but a thunder dragon. As Wang Lin stared at the incoming blood ancestor, he lifted his hand and chopped down. The heavenly chop immediately shot out and the blood ancestor's right hand formed a seal, creating a blood shadow. The blood shadow charged out and collided with the heavenly chop before immediately collapsing. The blood ancestor frowned and sighed. If his cultivation level hadn't dropped, then the blood shadow would not collapse like it did. He was about to use another spell when he saw Wang Lin retreat into the clouds once more. Wang Lin also used heavenly chops without a care at the cost of origin energy. At this moment, Wang Lin had too much origin energy inside his body. The heavenly chops were like blades of law that shot through the clouds toward the blood ancestor. The blood ancestor let out a cold snort and his hand formed a seal. There was a flash of bloodlight that created runes, and then they all collapsed in a flash. This actually made all the clouds around him back up 10 feet. Wang Lin's eyes were calm as he hid inside the clouds and quickly retreated. At the same time, he devoured large amounts of clouds, causing countless bolts of thunder to enter his body. The energy from the old man was rapidly dissipating. The blood ancestor locked onto Wang Lin as he charged forth. 2 balls of blood formed in his hand and then he charged straight at Wang Lin. He wanted to end this as quickly as possible. He had a feeling of crisis inside this clouds, and the longer it lasted, the more he feared a mishap would occur. If he wasn't inside the divine retribution clouds, then the blood ancestor's goal wouldn't be difficult to achieve, as his cultivation level was still higher. However, inside this divine retribution cloud, it would be very difficult to kill Wang Lin. Wang Lin's thunder origin soul was like a fish in water. The energy from the mysterious old man was negating all the thunder entering his body. And, on top of all that, there was also the powerful surge of origin energy inside his body. All of this allowed him to do as he wished inside these clouds. Facing the blood ancestor's chase, Wang Lin moved through the clouds as he constantly absorbed thunder and devoured clouds. The clouds gradually grew smaller. Just at this moment, Wang Lin's body suddenly trembled. The energy from the old man had completely dissipated, so there was no more chaos inside his body, only origin energy. Under the impact of the powerful origin energy, Wang Lin's cultivation level increased like crazy. In an instant, he broke through the peak of the illusory yin stage and entered the corporeal yang stage. This didn't end here. As the origin energy was absorbed by his origin soul and all the celestial spiritual energy disappeared from his body, his cultivation level increased once more. He went from just entering the corporeal yang stage to becoming stabilized in it. The change in Wang Lin's body caused the blood ancestor's expression to change greatly. He even felt his scalp tingle a bit. I can let him continue. If I let him continue, he might even reach the early stage of Nirvana Scryer. The blood ancestor's eyes were bloodshot. When he was watching the divine retribution, he had adjusted his body and had now formed flesh. An even more powerful feeling than before filled Wang Lin's body. His eyes lit up like a torch, and he felt like he had control over the world. He took a deep breath as the blood ancestor closed in. He then placed his finger between his eyebrows, allowing his origin soul to charge out. His body fell from the clouds but was guided by a spell. After his body landed, it immediately sat down to cultivate. After charging out from his body, Wang Lin's origin soul turned into an ancient thunder dragon more than 1,000 feet long. He looked extremely shocking within the divine retribution clouds. Blood ancestor, since you delivered yourself to me, then you might as well grant my wish. Aimlessly wishing for the like button for the video. Chapter 769. Confidence. The ancient thunder dragon was born from thunder. It was currently flickering within the divine retribution clouds. Its thoughts were echoing in the area like thunder. The blood ancestor's eyes suddenly widened. At the moment Wang Lin's origin soul moved, all of the clouds whistled and the might of the divine retribution spread. Shortly after, Wang Lin's ancient thunder dragon origin soul appeared from the clouds with countless bolts of thunder following closely after. You recording death! The blood ancestor's expression was gloomy as he quickly retreated. He threw the 2 balls of blood in his hand and shouted, "Blood explosion!" With a bang, the balls of blood exploded and a powerful force spread. Wang Lin's ancient thunder dragon origin soul immediately dissipated. However, the blood ancestor didn't relax at all and became even more cautious. Countless bolts of thunder formed where Wang Lin's origin soul disappeared. They rained down on the blood ancestor like crazy from all directions. You want to obtain my blood body? You overestimate yourself. The blood ancestor's eyes narrowed as his hand formed a seal and bloodlight covered his body. The rain of thunder didn't rush into the bloodlight but circled around it. The blood ancestor was startled. His expression changed when he realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The divine retribution thunder that was chasing after Wang Lin now descended like crazy toward the blood ancestor. Wang Lin, The blood ancestor clenched his teeth as the blood light flashed brightly and immediately pushed Wang Lin's origin soul back. However, during this process, the divine retribution thunderbolts continued to fall. They went through Wang Lin's origin soul and directly landed on the blood ancestor. He quickly retreated and wanted to leave this divine retribution cloud. Senior blood ancestor, your blood planet has been destroyed, and even your concubine Zijin has died after betraying you. Wang Lin's divine sense echoed, which caused the blood ancestor's expression to become even more gloomy. Also, your blood pavilion is quite interesting. Wang Lin's voice came from the void. You were here killing me, but I wonder if you know that when your daughter Yao Xishui goes back to the blood planet, she will be like a sheep walking into the tiger's jaws. Ever since Wang Lin first saw blood ancestor after waking up, he had not seen a trace of Yao Xishui. It was impossible to protect her from the collapse of the storage space. Wang Lin deduced that the most likely scenario was that Yao Xishui had already been resurrected with the help of the blood ancestor. Wang Lin's words were like an invisible divine retribution that landed in the blood ancestor's heart. His origin soul was also damaged from before, so under this unstable state, he was shocked. Yao Xishui was his weakness. Wang Lin. As the blood ancestor's mind trembled, the blood light around him began to flicker, showing signs of instability. A laughter echoed, and then the void where Wang Lin's origin soul was located immediately turned into countless bolts of thunder. The thunder charged toward the blood ancestor from all directions like crazy. They penetrated the blood-colored light and directly went into the blood ancestor's body. At this moment, the divine retribution descended like crazy, and there were even 7 colored thunderbolts mixed in. The blood ancestor's origin soul let out a mad roar and wanted to rush out. However, Wang Lin's origin soul was now inside his body, and it had started a life-and-death battle. The two of them battled with the blood ancestor's body as the battlefield. Originally, the blood ancestor's origin soul wasn't his weak. However, he had half of his origin soul taken by the mysterious old man. Then he encountered Wang Lin and was seriously injured again. But even after all this, his origin soul was still stronger than Wang Lin's. However, Wang Lin's origin soul was filled with origin energy, and he had just reached the corporeal yang stage. But the most important part was that Wang Lin wasn't trying to take over the blood ancestor's body. He was only focused on entangling the blood ancestor to prevent the blood ancestor from leaving the clouds. This allowed him to put up an even fight. The blood ancestor had to die. If this person didn't die, then the person who would die was him. Wang Lin understood this very well, and that was why he was willing to keep the blood ancestor within the clouds at all costs, to kill him using the power of the divine retribution. However, the divine retribution was about to dissipate, and it was not as strong as before. However, every bolt of thunder that fell on the blood ancestor made him shiver. Half of the divine retribution's tyrannical force would damage him, and the other half would be absorbed by Wang Lin. The rumbling thunder continued to descend, and the clouds quickly dissipated. A devastating power began to form inside the dissipating clouds. As the last bolt of thunder formed, it immediately sucked in all the remaining clouds and descended with a bang. This was the last wrath from the heavens, and this attack was going to kill. The crisis of death immediately filled the blood ancestor. He was being entangled by Wang Lin's origin soul and couldn't run at all. He made a ruthless decision as he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Blood seal. The blood quickly formed a huge seal that fell on his body like a net. The moment the net fell, there was a flash of red light from between the blood ancestor's eyebrows. His origin soul charged out and in a flash appeared outside the clouds. Wang Lin, I give up this blood body. You won't be able to escape with the seal, so withstand the divine retribution yourself. He was filled with unimaginable hatred as he rushed out, but he didn't look back as he quickly fell. This time he was in an extremely miserable state. He was missing more than half of his origin soul and had lost his body. If he didn't escape now with his broken origin soul, and if Wang Lin didn't die, the consequences would be unimaginable. He even felt regret. If he had agreed to Wang Lin's promise, he could have saved Yao Xishui and not be in such a sorry state. However, right now, it was too late. Wang Lin's origin soul was locked inside the blood ancestor's body by the blood seal, but he didn't want to escape. His origin soul became active as the divine retribution landed. The thunderous rumbling quickly spread across the area. The blood seal was broken, and the blood ancestor's body was in pieces. Wang Lin's origin soul was forced out, then he turned into an ancient thunder dragon and roared at the sky. The cloud completely dissipated, and the divine retribution disappeared. Wang Lin's origin soul took the blood ancestor's body back to the fragment. This fragment was now only about 1,000 feet wide. It no longer looked like a fragment, it was more like a large stamp. When his origin energy returned to his body, his eyes opened and a powerful aura swelled within his body. He took a deep breath and put away the blood body. At the same time, he looked down at the stamp below him. His eyes lit up, and he hit the ground with his hand. The fragment immediately trembled, then it began to shrink until it was the size of a grain of sand, and was devoured by Wang Lin. He then flew off into the void while laughing. At this moment, Wang Lin was at the corporeal yang stage. Although he was not at the peak, he was not far off. His body was filled with origin energy, but most of it hadn't been absorbed. Once he absorbs it, he will immediately be at the peak of the corporeal yang stage, and be infinitely closer to becoming a real second-step cultivator. Aside from a limited few people, no one else was a match for Wang Lin in the Thunder Celestial realm. The current him, with his spells and magical treasures, like this celestial realm fragment and the beast tones. Even though he might not be able to win when he encounters someone who has just entered the second step, he would be qualified to fight. The pressure from escaping from the Alliance star system to the Al-Heaven star system disappeared completely. Wang Lin's divine sense spread out, and he quickly went toward where the blood ancestor ran off to. Exterminate the root to leave no trouble in the future. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. His corporeal yang cultivation activated, and his speed was several times faster than before. He was like a meteor charging through the void. A powerful sense of self-confidence appeared on his heart. This kind of confidence didn't have much to do with his cultivation. This was a confidence from someone who was a heaven-defying cultivator. It turns out that even powerful cultivators like the Blood Ancestor, the Ulcer, Ling Tianho, and other are not invincible. Wang Lin's gaze was firm, and he revealed a sneer. Even the Ulcer could not have imagined that his disciple from a semi-wasted planet would have forced the Blood Ancestor into such a state due to a series of opportunities. However, someone has probably been helping me otherwise. The Blood Ancestor wouldn't have been as weak as he was when I found him. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. This doubt still existed in his heart. At this moment, on a fragment in front of Wang Lin, Li Yuan was escaping with a pale expression. His right arm was gone and blood was seeping out of it. There were many sword wounds on his body, the most shocking one being the one on his stomach. Even his origin soul was injured and showing signs of collapse. If not for his family's spells, he would have already died. A death aura filled Li Yuan's body. He revealed a bitter smile and an unwilling expression. He wanted to fight back, but the other party had an ancient mirror that broke restrictions. He had also helped Wang Lin, and had used his heart restriction, and it still hadn't recovered. Unless he could create some distance, he couldn't hide himself in a short period of time. Only a family that have inheritances from the celestial realm can have an ancient mirror that can break restrictions. If my Li family was still powerful, these people would be mere clowns, but now alas, Brother Shu, I want be able to complete my promise of giving you the restriction heart. This is not my wish. Cousin, this person sure has a lot of treasures, and they are very powerful. I very much like this celestial sword. Behind Li Yuan were 3 people casually chasing him. Among the 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman. The woman was very beautiful and her eyes contained an alluring charm. She was currently holding one of the celestial swords that Li Yuan got from the celestial storage space. The 2 males were 1 young and 1 old. The younger one smiled as he looked at her and calmly said, "This person still has 8 more. Since junior sister Xia likes them, once I take them and ask where he got them, I'll gift them all to you." This person's cultivation was also at the peak of the late stage of Ascendant, but the old man's was not simple. If Wang Lin was here, he would immediately be able to tell that this old man was at the peak of the illusory yin stage. Wishing for the like button for the VIDEO. You are listening to a completely free audiobook on the Leo Audio YouTube channel. If you enjoy the story, please like the video to motivate the channel. Support Leo with a cup of coffee through the description link or on the screen. If you want to hear any other stories, just comment and let Leo know. Thank you very much for watching the video. Chapter 76, The Strange Flying Sword. Lu San jerked his head back. He gnashed his teeth and said, "You really were in spy." Yang Sen's eyes were filled with rage as he looked at Wang Lin. The dark-faced man's pupils shrank. He knew that the method Wang Lin used to get the box wasn't something a mortal could do. The middle-aged scholar was also stunned. He looked at Wang Lin with a complex expression and sighed. Song Xing shouted, "You dare?" Then, he quickly jumped forward and grabbed toward Wang Lin's head. Song Eng's move caused Lu San's group to be confused, but Lu San didn't stop Song Xing. Everyone else also moved out of the way, opening a path to Wang Lin. Wang Lin didn't even raise his head. Instead, he opened the box and saw a very shriveled-up ginseng. This ginseng's body was very small, but it had countless roots. There was a yellow talisman on the ginseng, covering up the spiritual energy inside it. Song Xing had already gotten close. He smiled as he was ready to break Wang Lin's head. Then, his body suddenly quivered as an invisible force stopped him. Song Xing was tossed to the side and didn't get back up. The bizarre scene before them caused everyone to be stunned. Wang Lin didn't tear the talisman off the ginseng, but looked at it for a while. Then, he sighed and said, "You see an old friend and you want even come out to say hi?" With a series of rustling sounds, that cold-looking youth walked out of the forest. There was an invisible force around his body. All of the black-clothed men were pushed to the side as he walked by. In addition, the 3 fireballs floating in the air returned to the youth and circled around him. The moment the black-clothed men saw the youth, they respectfully said, "We greet the boss!" The youth didn't even look at Song Xing, who was coughing up blood, but looked at Wang Lin and said, "The person I know couldn't have not changed at all in 10 years. Who exactly are you?" Wang Lin looked at the youth, but didn't say a word. Instead, he took out a yellow paper from his bag of holding. The moment the cold-looking youth saw the paper, he was stunned. He looked at Wang Lin a bit more, then frowned. He said, "Friend, what exactly is this? Friend, please give me that ginseng. It is very important to me." Wang Lin was stunned and looked at the youth in front of him for a while. A doubt appeared in his heart. He spread out his divine sense and found something abnormal in the sky. He coldly smiled in his heart, then threw the ginseng over and said, "Forget it. I got the wrong person." A myriad of complex feelings crossed the youth's eyes. He caught the ginseng and said, "Thank you. Farewell." With that, he turned to leave when a dark cloud suddenly appeared. The moment the dark cloud appeared, a gust of wind caused everyone in the mighty escort to take several steps back. The dark cloud quickly moved and descended. As the cloud got lower, a strange gust of wind appeared and became stronger and stronger. A middle-aged man dressed in white stepped onto the gust of wind and descended. The moment he appeared, an escort guard exploded into a mist of blood. Then several other guards also exploded and turned into mist made of blood. The blood mist moved strangely in the air. They quickly gathered together and formed a shiny drop of blood. The middle-aged man opened his mouth and sucked in. The drop of blood entered his mouth and his face turned red. He said, "Zhang Hu, you met someone you know. Why are you afraid of admitting it?" Zhang Hu's face quickly turned cold and respectfully said, "Teacher, disciple doesn't he know this person?" Wang Lin's expression remained calm. He sent out his divine sense and was stunned. This middle-aged man had already reached the peak of the 15th layer. The middle-aged man smiled and said to Wang Lin, "Fellow cultivator, do you know my disciple?" Wang Lin's expression didn't change at all. He said, "So what if I know or if I don't know him?" The middle-aged man was stunned. He looked at Wang Lin for a bit, then suddenly smiled. "Makes no difference. Although you're only at the TH layer, if I drink your blood, it will still increase my cultivation a bit." Zhang Hu's face suddenly changed. He quickly got in front of the middle-aged man and said, "Teacher, this person is my childhood friend. Please spare him." A cold light flashed across the middle-aged man's eyes. He said, "Leave. Go and gather the blood essence of all of the mortals here. You have no business with this matter." Zhang Hu was about to speak when the middle-aged man sneered as he said some words. Zhang Hu's face suddenly became pale, and he started to bleed out of his orifices as large quantities of sweat dripped from his forehead. Wang Lin raised his brow. He activated his attraction technique and grabbed toward the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He let out a cold snort as he spat out a green light. The green light turned into a flying sword and slashed at the hand. Wang Lin's attraction technique had already reached an unimaginable level. The hand split into two hands. One grabbed Zhang Hu and the other grabbed the flying sword. The small green sword started to vibrate. The light the sword emitted flickered on and off. The middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed, and he threw out a black sword scabbard from his bag of holding. Without a word, he shot out several red lights from his hand. The moment the scabbard appeared, the green sword that was grabbed by the attraction technique suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was next to the scabbard and fused with it. Wang Lin's face looked calm, but his heart was shocked. This was the first time the attraction technique had failed. A cold light flashed across his eyes. He slapped his bag of holding and several pieces of black wood appeared. The pieces of black wood fused into a whip and quickly flew out. Situ Nan's voice appeared in Wang Lin's ears. Wang Lin, there is something strange about that sword. The moment the flying sword entered the scabbard, it started to emit a buzzing sound as if it was facing a lot of resistance. After sinking in 1/5 of the way, it was no longer able to go any deeper. The green sword suddenly turned to blue and yanked itself out of the scabbard and slashed at the whip. This whip was something he got from Zhang Kuang. When he was in closed-door training, he refined it to belong to him with advice from Situ Nan. Wang Lin controlled the whip to go around the flying sword and charged directly at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man sneered. He ignored the whip and pointed at the flying sword. He muttered a few words. Then the flying sword shook and suddenly disappeared. It reappeared in front of the middle-aged man and slashed downwards. The middle-aged man grinned and spat out a drop of golden blood. The drop of golden blood immediately turned into thin threads and entered the flying sword. Wishing for the like button for the VIDEO, hoping to double the likes on the VIDEO. In the meantime, everyone, throw your spare ones here. Chapter 770. Yao Family. 1. In the void, Wang Lin's speed became faster and faster as he got more and more familiar with his corporeal yang cultivation. The origin energy inside his body was dense, and as it cycled inside his body, he felt slight discomfort. Every step he took would contain origin energy, making him feel like he was breaking through space. This was far too different from before. At this moment, Wang Lin was a bit uncoordinated, and his body was trembling slightly. He even vaguely felt that he had become one with the world. As long as he put his mind to it, he would be able to achieve it. This feeling became stronger and stronger until an impulse appeared in his heart. In the end, this impulse became even stronger. He looked at the void and felt as if he was really going to merge with the world. It was as if the void in the world was his body, but this feeling was somewhat absurd. Wang Lin's calm and intellectual mind told him that it was impossible, but the feeling from his body and origin soul felt so real. His eyes lit up, and after silently pondering for a moment, Wang Lin let go of his reason. He closed his eyes and used the feeling from his origin soul to take a step. When he took this step, the void suddenly trembled. It was as if the void was a pool of water, and Wang Lin's step had caused countless ripples to spread across this pool. At the same time, Wang Lin's origin energy began to cycle. It diffused around his body and began to fuse with the world, forming a mysterious connection. Just at this moment, Wang Lin's body disappeared. There was a spell that was faster than instant movement at the nascent soul stage, one that was beyond teleportation at the ascendant stage. And there was the technique of using countless greater teleportations at once. However, this spell was even faster. This spell was called spatial bending. This was a spell that ancient cultivators could only use once they formed their origin souls. In the current cultivation world, only those at the Nirvana Scryer stage could use this origin spell. Not every second-step cultivator could comprehend this spell. This had nothing to do with talent but with one's comprehension of origin energy. The blood ancestor was rapidly fleeing countless kilometers from where Wang Lin disappeared. His cultivation level had been reduced to corporeal yang stage, so he couldn't use many spells. At the moment, his origin soul was also damaged, making him even weaker. Wang Lin, once I recover, I swear I'll kill you. The blood ancestor moved extremely fast and was like a shadow as he flew through the void. After a long time, he finally relaxed and muttered, "That brat Wang Lin should be unable to catch up to me now." I mused find a place and use the secret method to recover my cultivation back to the Nirvana Scryer stage as soon as possible. After pondering for a while, the blood ancestor made up his mind. However, at this moment, His expression changed greatly, and he began to escape again without any hesitation. There was a ripple behind him, and Wang Lin's figure walked out. When Wang Lin's right foot landed, his eyes opened. In the distance, the blood ancestor had almost lost his wits and was completely shocked. Spatial bending! This person hasn't reached the Nirvana Scryer stage yet. How could he use a spell that only second-step cultivators can use? No way! The blood ancestor quickly escaped and felt bitterness in his heart. It is often said that those who can step across the yin and yang stage in one go will often be at the peak of second step. Could this be true? The blood ancestor was aghast at this. Even before his cultivation level had dropped, he had only managed to touch the edge of this spell that couldn't be learned and only comprehended. As far as he knew, not even Ling Tianhao fully understood this spell. To people like them, this spell was something infinitely close to a spell of the third step. The first time the blood ancestor felt a trace of fear toward Wang Lin, this fear came from what he personally saw. He personally witnessed the changes that happened to Wang Lin. He witnessed Wang Lin go from a peak late-stage ascendant cultivator to Wang Lin's current stage. This little brat must be lucky. Yes, he must be lucky to be able to use spatial bending. The blood ancestor felt extremely bitter. He didn't even turn his head as he quickly fled. At the moment Wang Lin opened his eyes, they revealed clarity. He was still a bit confused on what had just happened. To him, it felt like he had just lifted his right foot and then landed. However, during this process, it was as if he had stepped into the passage of time and everything had passed by him. When his foot landed, he was here, and before him was the blood ancestor he was chasing. My divine sense was not even locked onto him. I only had the intent of killing him, and yet I mysterious crossed an immeasurable distance to reach here. Wang Lin didn't chase the blood ancestor's disappearing figure. He silently pondered the feeling he had before. Compared to chasing the blood ancestor, Wang Lin knew that comprehending this was more precious. Time seemed to pass extremely slowly, but it also felt like it began to move really fast. After half an incense stick of time passed, Wang Lin's eyes revealed enlightenment. He looked down at the void as he lifted his right root and took a step forward. With one step, the ripple appeared once more, but his body was still there. The feeling of his body becoming one with the world didn't appear. Wang Lin frowned. He looked at the direction where the blood ancestor ran to and began chasing. Chasing after the blood ancestor was only one reason, but at this moment, it was more important for Wang Lin to get that feeling of fusing with the world. When Wang Lin thought about what happened before, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. If I can master that kind of spell, that mean that I will be invisible and formless. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a strange light as he moved forward. As time passed, he moved faster and faster until he was like a ray of light that flashed by. That feeling of integrating with the world once again appeared in Wang Lin's heart. He suppressed his excitement and began comprehending it. However, this kind of feeling was extremely ethereal and couldn't be fully mastered. When the feeling started disappearing, Wang Lin let out a sigh. The blood ancestor appeared in his mind, and with one step he disappeared. The escaping blood ancestor felt an uneasiness in his heart. This feeling wasn't this strong even when he faced the Yao family ancestor. Just at this moment, his expression changed greatly and he retreated without even thinking. However, at this instant, the shadow of a whip came from the void and mercilessly lashed toward him. The blood ancestor's hands formed a seal to create a ray of bloodlight that collided with the whip. Then he quickly retreated. Ripples appeared behind the whip, and then Wang Lin walked out from within. The blood ancestor's heart trembled greatly. The scene before him had shaken his world view. After seeing Wang Lin use spatial bending twice in a row, he was no longer able to lie to himself that it was only a fluke. After Wang Lin appeared, he charged forward and his finger pointed at the sky. An underworld river suddenly appeared, and it was filled with sharp, resentful wails that echoed across the void. This underworld river was different from before. The current underworld river was filled with origin energy. It was obvious that as Wang Lin grew stronger, even this spells would fundamentally change. Wang Lin coldly stared at the blood ancestor and softly said, "Origin energy underworld river." In an instant, the underworld river trembled and began to extend indefinitely as if it was going to replace the world. It encompassed everything, including Wang Lin and the blood ancestor. The boundless origin energy filled the world, and the countless resentful souls began to gather before they all charged at the Blood Ancestor from all directions. The Blood Ancestor's expression was extremely gloomy. Right now he was only an origin soul and was extreme weak. This underworld river made him even weaker, but the Blood Ancestor was still the Blood Ancestor. Even now, it would be difficult for Wang Lin to kill him. Despite being surrounded by the underworld river, his face showed a flash of power. Both of his hands formed seals and his body released a blinding red light. A powerful pressure spread out from his body. Blood transformation. The Blood Ancestor's origin soul changed, and in an instant turned into giant blood claws that shot straight toward Wang Lin. With one swipe, 5 cracks charged toward Wang Lin like roaring dragons. At the moment the cracks closed, and Wang Lin raised his right hand. Origin energy filled his body and he slapped the cracks, causing an explosion. Wang Lin backed out of the underworld river and shouted, "Underworld river soul condense!" The countless resentful spirits condensed and origin energy filled them, making them even more fierce. Countless resentful spirits took the form of Yao Shishu before they charged toward the Blood Ancestor. The Blood Ancestor let out a cry as he turned around and swiped behind as if he wanted to tear this underworld river apart. As for those souls that looked like Yao Shishui, even though he knew that they were fake, he was unwilling to attack. Thanks to the power of the claws, he was able to rip open a gap in the underworld river and charge out, but countless souls in the form of Yao Shishui blocked him. The Blood Ancestor let out a sad cry. His face was filled with resolve and he swiped the blood claws. Countless Yao Shishus collapsed while letting out very sad and real cries that fell in the Blood Ancestor's ears. This caused his already injured mind to tremble. The underworld river began to collapse under the Blood Ancestor's attack and the gap grew larger. Finally, the Blood Ancestor charged out with an unspeakable amount of hatred. "Wang Lin, you and I can coexist." After rushing out, although the Blood Ancestor was fierce, his heart felt exhausted. Yao Shishui's sorrowful screams constantly echoed in his mind as if they would never dissipate. At the moment he charged out, Wang Lin arrived before him with the soul flag in hand. Black clouds came out from the